Hello and welcome to this very special episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. This is the final podcast of the 2024-25 season, and this is the Terrace Podcast End of Season Awards Show. Over the next 100 minutes or so, we will be handing out 12 awards. These gongs commemorate the highest of highs and the most dismal low points of the Scottish Premiership season. It's been a wild ride, but it's time to pull over to the side of the road and reflect on what's been another fantastic campaign for all involved. I am your host, Craig Telfer, and it is a thrill to be presenting this podcast, and I'm joined by three distinguished, venerable and imperious members of this podcast, and in person too, no less. Today's award ceremony, it's got a real Attitude Era feel to it as we bring together three pillars that really put this enterprise on the map all the way back in 2012. Three pillars that are rarely seen in person these days. No gimmicks, no DEI hires, just big boys taking unprotected chair shots to the head and incessantly talking about puppies. Up first, imagine a reboot of California Man, the 1992 teen comedy where two teenagers discover a frozen caveman, but instead of teaching him how to skateboard, they get him into Scottish football instead. Wheeze the juice, it's Craig Fowler.
Hello, Telfer.
Up next, this charming story of a lovable, larger-than-life characters will please all the family. This is a delightful woodland romp with many of the best scenes featuring a roly-poly toad. It's Tony Anderson.
Hello, Craig. Thank you.
And finally, this man has a strong, hard body that, in the right light, looks like it's been crafted from the Camera marble made by the greatest sculptors, but he's got a face that looks like a bit like the weird alien hybrid creature that gets sucked into space at the end of Alien Resurrection. It's Joel Sked.
Well, we'll have to watch that now to see to get the reference.
I think Fowler's laughing, so I think he says, yeah, actually, when you I can see where he's coming from a wee bit.
Can I just go back to your intro music?
Yes.
I like how this award show's got the same intro music as the award show in A View from the Terrace.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, there's not many award show music. It's quite difficult, so just keep it consistent. Keep it consistent, Joe. I mean, that took me, I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning pulling all this together while you were no doubt in bed.
We should just wait until you got here for the hour that you had in between getting this all together.
Yes, we've been waiting an hour while Fowler's set up the camera equipment. There's a tripod right next to me which you could wobble at any moment, so if there are any technical mishaps, then we apologise.
We've got the main one set up. That could capture everything.
Excellent. Well, listen. You know, enough of the back chat, enough of the expository dialogue. Let's get right into it. And our first award is the Josh McGuinness Award for the most improved, a player who's shown significant leaps forward over the past 12 months. And the four nominees, and I should point out that all these nominees were selected by our subscribers on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. It's now known as X. To sound like Donald Trump when I'm doing that, formerly known as X, just Twitter, big, beautiful. Anyway, the first nominees for the Josh McGuinness Award for most improved is Shayden Morris of Aberdeen, Fraser Murray at Kilmarnock, Nicholas Kuhn at Celtic, and Rocky Bushiri at Hibernian. Go to yourself first, Tony. Out of the four nominees, who do you think deserves the Josh McGuinness Award for most improved?
I find this one really difficult because of that singular game that happened at the end of the season with the cup final. It's sort of thrown everything off kilter.
Yeah.
What's actually right? What's actually wrong anymore? Are we basing genuine improvement over an extended period of time, or are we talking about someone who's achieved more than you would ever believe? Shayden Morris did have a huge improvement on last season, but he still was sort of sub. He was still an impact player. He still had ups and downs over the season, like he's a
30-minute player, and he's still that's an improvement because he was a 0-minute player. He was absolutely awful before, but he makes an impact, and he makes an impact for the starting 11, or he makes an impact coming off the bench. But he's never the type of player that puts it all together for 90 minutes. And I think he won Aberdeen's Player of the Year. He obviously got the, if you could call it, assist in the Scottish Cup final. But I think him getting Aberdeen's Player of the Year is more a reflection of the kind of really weird season that Aberdeen had, where nobody was good for the majority. I think Meatov probably would have got the Player of the Year if he hadn't been injured for a sustained period. And I don't want to say like it's a reflection of Aberdeen, because I still think Morris is good, but I just don't think. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. You're right, Tony. This is very tough because Morris kind of was the worst. If you're looking at in terms of improvement from the fact that now he's a good a very good Scottish Premiership squad player, a good Scottish Premiership player in general. Before, he was absolutely useless. I don't think anybody else on this list was absolutely useless.
I think he's gone from being a chaos factor in a negative sense to being a chaos factor in a positive sense. And yeah, he's a thrilling man to watch, but I think he summed up better. He's at best when he's a 30-minute player.
Yeah, and he had one of the coolest moments this season. I mean, people will always remember this sort of like decent cross that Schmeichel made a mess of. But the goal he scored at Dingwall was, for me, was one of the highlights of the season to actually watch in front of you. Him picking up the ball for the halfway line, rinsing everyone, nobody can get near him, and then he clatters the ball off the bar and into the goals. It's sunny, we're first hit in summer. It was such a special moment, really, for the season. But the question that you asked me, Telfer, to come right down, I'm obviously going to say Rocky Bashiri. I think his is the most romantic, and I also think that he also won.
Well, romance is dead.
And he also won Player of the Year, moment of the season at Hibs. Without him, I don't think any of that would have happened.
I think just to give a peek behind the curtain to our listeners and the people watching on YouTube, when we were discussing these nominations prior to this, Tony wanted something to do with Hibernian in every single category at one point here. So I suppose, Fowler, you're laughing.
They've had a good season.
Rocky Bashiri, is he someone? Because not only that, I mean, he played not only has he improved, but he played a massive factor in Hibernian's turnaround. Of course, scoring that late equaliser against Aberdeen. So, a real fork in the road moment for him.
So that was a huge moment this season. Probably no, I can't think of a single campaign where so much is turned on one moment, and that's really what happened with Bashiri's goal. With Bashiri, before, he could play well. Like, he would have games where he was good, he would have spells where he was good, but it wouldn't last too long, and when it started to go wrong, it would go spectacularly wrong. And then he would be out of the team again, and it got to the point where this season, a manager who was, worked with him for a number of years, did they play together at all? Or no, was Gray retired by that point? But Gray was on the coaching staff, so he knew all about Bashiri, and he didn't play him until November. Like, he only started playing about 3 weeks before that game against Aberdeen. And since then, he's been consistently great. And, well, a couple of shaky moments around about the turn of the year, the goal at Tynecastle, the very end of the game against Rangers, the 3-3, where he almost let Egeman through to score a fourth.
He did score the equaliser in that game as well.
Yeah, he did. But this is the point. He's had these moments, he's had games, he's had periods, but he's never done it for 6 months. So when you're talking about Bashiri for this award, you're basically talking about somebody who has found consistency in his game that wasn't there before.
I won't say it's won't go as far as saying it's romantic, but it's the narrative's completely changed on him, considering where he's been a joke figure, and I think more of a joke figure outside of Hibs rather than Hibs. And I think there's been a large portion of Hibs fans have all Hibs fans have appreciated him and just wanted him to do really well, and he's turned into just like a figure of kind of hope to just a proper cult hero.
You talk about joke figure, even that game at Tynecastle that I referenced, which was Boxing Day, so that wasn't long after Bashiri had started to play
Hearts
well.
fans are singing about Rocky Bashiri.
They're singing about him, and the stadium announcer announces that he's the one that scored their own goal, and that never happens. And would he have done it with many other players other than Bashiri?
Did it with Simon Murray when he scored.
Did he? Okay, alright, so this is the thing then.
I actually think in terms of Bashiri, the moment at Aberdeen is when it turned Hibs season. What turned Bashiri's career at Hibs was that Tynecastle. Because after it, everyone expected the roof to cave in on him. Everyone thought, right, he's made that mistake. The Hearts fans are singing a song about him. He's well known for making mistakes. He has a bit of a joke figure outside.
He has to do press as well after the game. Like, he kind of requests, he's like, right, I'm going to speak because I've just had big turnaround moment. And
I think he'd already had a booking as well under his belt, and he was absolutely brilliant in the second half for Hibs. And then obviously all the Hibs fans were singing the song. The Hearts fans sang about him at the end, and he came over and led the celebrations, which became a big part of Hibs' routine when they were winning all these games, is that Bashiri was the man at the front who led the celebrations and became such a popular figure. So I think where Fowler's going with this, I totally get it, but I would say Rocky Bashiri's the poster boy for improvement in Scottish football this season, whereas maybe in terms of actual ability, where the jump off is, it is possibly elsewhere.
I think he does fit into go back to the person this award's named after, and Josh McGuinness was that kind of figure where he was kind of laughed at, or he was kind of laughable, and then he became like, oh, you know what, he's actually pretty good, and you could fit Bashiri into this. bring it around to the two other names on it.
Yeah, I was going to ask about them. Fraser Murray at Kilmarnock, Nicholas Kuhn at Celtic.
Fraser Murray was the one probably consistent this season. Anytime I've watched Kilmarnock, thinking, "Wow, where's this came from? And what's he doing?" And he looks so effective, and he's stepped up at a time where Matty Kennedy's had injury issues, and Danny Armstrong's, I would say, he's had one really good season, and either side of that, you're not really sure.
Armstrong's raw numbers were still pretty good, like in terms of goals and assists, but his performances were definitely dropped from last season.
The fact that he was on the bench at times, whereas Fraser Murray just a really exciting player, and is similar to Shayden Morris, where he just gets the ball and drives forward with it, and he was really, really good. And he was the one I probably would have gravitated to during the season. I think Tony's made a really good point, strong point for Bashiri's case. Nicholas Kuhn.
It's just the same thing that happens second season with loads of Celtic players.
Yeah.
They settle in for a while, they play, and then they go, "This is actually really easy. Why have I not just been doing this all the time? Give me the ball. Go."
But he's also tailed off.
I was going to say his form did tail off for the second part of the season.
It did, but his first half, and not great in the cup final, but he did get it back a little bit towards the end of the season. I think that's enough.
I think
put him in
Raskin would have been a
consideration.
better shout for this than Nicholas Kuhn.
I did,
Yeah, just
There
see how
wasn't
essentially is.
really any Rangers fans who nominated it apart from Ewan in the group chat,
don't listen
and
to
we
us.
don't listen to him. So
So I do think it's if we're coming down to it, I think it's between Morris and Bashiri.
Okay, well, I think that seems to be the general consensus. Can we get an answer from you, Joel? Most improved player?
I'll go Bashiri.
Bashiri, Fowler?
Yeah, I'm just thinking there. He was considered not good enough to get a game ahead of Warren O'Hora and what's it? Pateta's first name, Marvin Pateta. So yeah, and now he's like,
fucking hell.
now he's like, it was in consideration for Hibs Player of the Year.
No, he won Player of the Year.
One Player of the Year. Yeah, there you go. That's Bashiri.
He won Players Player of the Year, and now they're begging him to sign a new contract. He's probably got a very, very strong hand at the moment.
And one of the probably the big things that won it for me is Bashiri over Morris is probably that Bashiri moment against Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll just say Shayden Morris then, so Aberdeen fan think, Tony, he's a really bad man.
No, that's
You'll avoid the very personal online abuse.
fairly unanimous. Congratulations to Hibernian defender Rocky Bashiri. You have won the Josh McGuinness Award for Most Improved. Now, we'll move on to the most disappointing team. The nominees are Heart of Midlothian, Rangers, Kilmarnock, and St Johnstone. Now, I think there's perhaps good arguments to be made about Heart of Midlothian, Rangers, or Kilmarnock, but I'd like to know why St Johnstone are in this mix, because at the beginning of the season, I would have had them heavily pegged to finish bottom of the table. They met my expectations.
Because we need 4 nominees, and it was either them or Ross County, and they finished below Ross County.
Okay, is there any case to be made at all for St Johnstone for
No,
this?
I thought they would finish bottom at the start of the season. I think that the reason why I went for them ahead of Ross County for the 4th nominee was that just St Johnstone have been in the top flight for a long time, and they did have this reputation of proving the critics wrong, and St Johnstone fans at the start of the season were quite bullish about that just because they've done it so many times. But we did all expect, well, I certainly expected them to finish bottom.
Because it wasn't just proving the critics wrong, it wasn't like St Johnstone were like the cockroach style, like Hamilton Academicals or something like that. It wasn't. They actually excelled in the top flight, had loads of amazing games, and won trophies and finished the European place. So it wasn't really. It's not the same thing as maybe what the other ones. But St Johnstone and Ross County have both been circling the drain now for about 3 years. So yeah, it's definitely not them.
No. So let's get into the other 3.
Okay, we'll start. We'll come to you both then. Why are Heart of Midlothian in this list? Finished 3rd place last season. We're playing in Europe, but just I think across every possible metric flopped.
Yeah,
it's not just last season as well, because they finished in the top 4 3 years running, and it was one spectacular meltdown towards the end of Robbie Nielsen's tenure,
Allowed Aberdeen
which stopped them from finishing 3rd 3 years in a row.
Which is unheard of.
Yeah.
Biggest disappointment for me is because I expected us to kick on this season and really cement 3rd place and go, right, we've
the island, I think, was one.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So basically, find that sweet spot between being behind Old Firm but being far ahead enough off the
ruining Scottish football further.
The rest of the mess. But it's just been from not even the start of the season, pre-season, we lost at home to Leyton Orient. We then went down to Fleetwood Town and put in one of the most pathetic, most friendly, but most pathetic 45-minute performances of all time. And even at that point, I was thinking there was loads of fans who were shouting abuse at the players, shouting abuse at Stephen Naismith. Like, something's not right here. And,
Hurts.
and so it proved.
But that's that's the reason to maybe say Hearts is that you can have clubs that go from third to bottom six. We're going to talk about another team that went from fourth to bottom six. But usually there's a bit more mitigating circumstances to it. Hearts going into the campaign, I initially picked Aberdeen to finish third. I was wrong about that anyway. But initially I was like, I'm not going to pick Hearts because teams just don't finish third 2 seasons in a row. It never seems to happen in Scottish football other than Derek McInnes at Aberdeen. But the reason I've ultimately changed my mind on this podcast and went for Hearts was that I just kind of looked at the squads. It was like, well, it's pretty much the same team. They've kept all it together. They've added pieces. I can only see this team being as good, if not even a little bit stronger. And boy, was I wrong about that.
I've got something to say about that. Is that I think when you talk about kicking on, I think Hearts were in a position where they got so much more than what they should have out of the group of players that they had last season. And I think there was an element of fortune about it. I think there was an element of the fact that Lawrence Shanklin had the season of his life. And what Hearts done was stand still, which was inexplicable because I think when you talk about data, which boy Hearts like to do, if you look at that, I think it would tell you that they were very much overperforming in terms of results for large periods of that. So that should have been like, the fucking hell, we're quids in. We've made it to third. We've done it at a street. Everyone's behind us. We'll sell tons of season tickets. Go in the group stages. Now's the time where we can still feel in our heads we can get rid of half of these without feeling any sort of real emotional attachment, which is normally an issue for a team when they do well. And they could have totally turned it around and done it for the position of strength. Instead, they stood still. And then what happened is the natural regression to the mean of what that actual group of players deserve to do.
But I don't know, because as a group of players that also finished, a big group of that player finished fourth and third. So they'd had that in the bank already and had that credit. Yes, when the Jamestown and Tony Bloom looked over that season, it was agreed that yes, they massively overperformed, but there still weren't overperformed to the extent that this was a bottom six team finishing third
definitely not to that, yeah.
But it was the fact that then coming into this season and we underperformed, but underperformed so badly. Whereas like if you look at the data and Hearts were still one of the best teams in the league this season, but everything could go wrong. Could go wrong. You're looking at Petro Cub embarrassing, losing to 10 men. Kilmarnock side that played with 10 men for about 85 minutes.
Ross County 2-0 draw.
2-0 leading Ross County.
Injury time. Well, that stunk.
Leading 2-0 going into the 96th minute and failing to win, and then like failing to win derbies, and then there were just so many opportunities throughout the season.
There was also nothing. I've said this loads of times. There was, because you can have bad seasons as a Hearts fan, but you can look back and go, we beat Hibs a couple of times. That was a good laugh. Or you maybe beat one of the old firm or something like that.
He's never got near any of those
Hearts had like zero fun this season. The only fun was beating Dundee 6-0 away from home. That was it. That was the only moment of fun.
We call that fun.
So I felt that we were the better side when we played Aberdeen each of the 4 times. There was a couple of games that were close, but I thought we were the better side. Didn't win a game. And then Rangers, there was a few times.
The one at Tynecastle when Cabangu just side-footed the ball at the goalkeeper.
Both times we played them at home. We were better side and then never beat Rangers. So I think we were the only team in
Rangers were the team that everyone was taking a pound of flesh from.
We couldn't do it.
Every decade, the Scottish clubs always have to go around Rangers and Celtic and go, right, we need to get a win this time.
Sorry, Fowler, do you want
to
start hosting this?
And I was just going to say, let's talk about Rangers, actually.
That's good. That was a natural segue to go in to talk about Rangers. I mean, what a bizarre campaign for them. I sort of went into they began the season playing at Hampden. So it seems like a lifetime ago this happened. They had an unpopular bald manager. He eventually was sacked. They lost to Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup. Barry Ferguson came in, and then this was a period where Rangers were still able to beat the likes of Celtic, some really rock and roll games against them, but were losing to Motherwell and St Mirren
and drawing 2 each in every other game.
Yeah.
The 2 old draws he had towards the end of the season was absolutely wild. Like, it's just the riff-raff of Scottish football. But I think with Rangers, it could be easy for us to be a bit of kind of almost like voter fatigue when it comes to them as most disappointed team, because they must have been in this so many times over the last 10 years or so, and it's just kind of standard. Rangers underperforming, Celtic winning the league by a mile. We've seen this story so many times, but the key thing for their candidacy for this award, as you said it, Queen's Park.
Yeah,
because that was a historic moment.
Because you see, if you looked at the league season, if you got told this is going to be their league season coming into the season, I think you'd feel because their transfer business was really weird.
Yeah,
and you just never felt that they'd made a big step to closing down Celtic. But then when you add in some of the aspects of how they got to the end of the season and Queen's Park, the Queen's Park side that went on to have disaster of an end to the season.
It's still, as you said, like at this point, they still had tons of fun. I mean, the Barry Ferguson beating Jose Mourinho over 2 legs was a magical moment for everyone. Everyone got to be involved in that.
They drew with Spurs. They drew with the Europa League winners.
Almost beat. I mean,
yeah. I doubt that you actually put it in that context. Yeah,
I know they didn't have a great season, but could beat Manchester United or sort of could take. Manchester United.
They nearly got points off of both the teams that went to the Europa League final.
So when you start to get context, they're just an impossible team. The season is one of the most fun on record for any team. Really, there was just, as you listed at the start, I find that you used to find Rangers quite boring, you know, when it was the winning all the time. But now they are like one of the most box office clubs on planet Earth, and it's not always negative. It's not always negative. They're just you're just like, you cannot analyze them in any shape or form. And like when it comes to European games, over the years, I've started to move towards supporting them almost, which is something I always do. Not because it's just like just because it's like I like the antithesis of that happening, and then the next week I just say the Submarine turn up.
I don't think you have to worry about buying that Rangers top and classic football shirts. I think Tony's going to get it for you.
But I think as well for Rangers going forward, I'm not sure how much this season has cost them, because that's been the feeling in the past. Like for instance, the inability to have built on the title win, and I think it was 2021. Yeah, when Celtic took the trip of doom to Dubai. But it feels as though coming next season, obviously with the new investment coming from the San Francisco 49ers, that's been confirmed. That was confirmed earlier in the week. That completely changes the landscape for them, and it should give them the money they need to go out there and sign the players that can compete.
I don't think things will change overnight. I think because
depends who they get as manager as well.
There's fair play rules to go into that in terms of how much they can spend right away. But what's going to be a massive boost for them is the money going on behind the scenes, because it was really kind of clear that Rangers were being quite cheap behind the scenes, and the guys they hired, like everybody they had in a position of power behind the club, was their first job at that level. Whereas now they can be able to go out and afford to.
Was Ibrox not falling apart? No, it's not like in pretty bad nick. So like all these classics, Old Trafford.
We should mention that he started his season at Hamden.
He did a whole intro. Too much time on your phone.
Work.
Bloody what? This is work.
Okay. Well, that's again very strong argument.
What's happening? Well, Laurie Shankly signed a contract.
Hearts are announced saying at 12 o'clock.
Well, very strong arguments for Hearts and Rangers, but what about Kilmarnock? You know, having had a really strong season last year, finishing 4th place, it just felt like the campaign never really got going for them.
I asked this to Craig Anderson, the patron, I did, and it may sound like a weird question to ask a team that finished 9th, and it's obviously Kelly as well, who most seasons you go into, you expect them to finish bottom 6. I was like, does it feel like a missed opportunity? And it does. It still does feel like for this Kilmarnock squad that they should have been good enough to finish in the top 6, but things just really snowballed at the start of the season. Europe could have sapped their energy.
Red cards.
They deliberately went for it in Europe as well. They actively said, even during it, that they were...
It's their focus.
Their focus, and they were playing lesser, like, resting.
I mean, they weren't that far away from the group stages of the Conference League. Yeah. They put up a better showing against Copenhagen than Hertz did, anyway. In the context of this list, they're not the most disappointing. They've had a disappointing season, but they've not been the most disappointment. I think you have also had to add in injuries. Everyone gets injuries, but more so, team like Kilmarnock, if your key players get injured, you can have a pretty big drop off quite easily.
And we pretty much learned that certain players were key that we didn't realise, like Finlay, for example. I think that showed that the rest of that defence that we all thought was incredible, and that those defenders removing everyone, maybe not the case, and maybe one guy is a big part of it.
If you look at that defence, and
like Jason Terrace and Johnston, for example.
He's different to any of the others.
Yeah.
Well then, Tony, I'll come to you. Who is the most disappointing team?
I'm still going to go for Hearts, because Rangers still won Old Firm games. They finished second, which was still the expected.
Did well in Europe.
If you take away the bells and the whistles and the fun bit, even despite the Queen's Park one, I still think Hearts mucked it up more.
Yeah, Rangers at least had a laugh last season.
Yeah,
Hearts did not have a laugh. Fowler, who are you going for?
I'm going for Rangers just because of the Queen's Park result.
Joe, you've got to cast and vote.
Oh, Hearts was a godforsaken season.
I also knew Joe was going to vote for Hearts.
They can't even get a second. It's so bad they can't even get a second to record something else.
No, I'm not sure if congratulations is the right word.
Commiserations.
Yeah, commiserations. You've been declared the most disappointing team. Now, we'll move on to Mr. Versatile. This is an award given to players who excel in at least 3 different positions. The nominations are Dre Wright at St Johnstone, Dundee's Jordan McGee, Lucas Stevenson at Dundee United, or Tom Sparrow at Motherwell? Tony, well, you've got your hand up.
No, just weak list.
Yes, a very weak. That's I thought that as well.
Hang on. A weak list apart from the obvious winner, Dre Wright.
Yeah. That's
He still played for the relegated team.
He was one of the better players of the relegated team. In fact, they may have had a chance of staying up if he hadn't got injured at a very inopportune time.
Dre Wright, the way he was used was absolutely insane.
I think he is. If you actually look, if you go back to the start of the season and you were told all the variations of how the league where it was going to go, where people were going to finish, how people were going to perform, and break it down to where players were going to perform. If someone told me what Dre Wright was going to do this season, I was like, that's the most ludicrous. Queen's Park beating Rangers, I can see that Dre Wright playing right wing back, right backs,
centre back.
You've gone too far this time.
He barely got a chance to play in the position he's played his whole career.
Is there anything to be said then about the other three nominees? Jordan McGee, Lucas Stevenson, Tom Sparrow.
Jordan McGee's a player I really like, but it was like this season's like the season that he played the least that he had in recent years. He got injured quite a bit. Is that just aside? Is that Motherwell deal still gone through?
I think so. Yeah, Dundee seemed to perform better when McGee was in the side. That's the best thing to say about him. Lucas Stevenson was good. I didn't think much of him to start with, but he just done a solid job wherever he played. And I've actually even blanked on the last one. Who was the last one?
Tom Sparrow was Motherwell's best player, probably, arguably.
Yeah, he ended the camp. I wasn't really much on him to begin with, but he's ended the campaign quite strongly and has been moved around a bit. But that Motherwell, Motherwell were the hardest team to analyse this year because there was just far too many cunts. Like, I don't mean cunts in terms of bad people.
They're not coming in going, hello.
I just mean like far too many people. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know why I called them cunts.
All these
bodies.
I think we can wrap this one up.
I don't think it's shit boring.
Dre Wright then for Mr. Versatile.
Dre Wright's been that versatile this season that I'm considering naming this the Dre Wright Award.
But we are going to have to get you, because we are now all moving into middle age and we've been doing this a long time, and we are now going to get listeners very soon going like, who the fuck is Josh McGuinness?
Who's Andy Dorman?
who's Andy Dorman? So we may have to accept.
I mean,
we educated them through the names.
You don't change the name of the award. Like, that's what you do. It's a Jules Rimet trophy. You don't change it.
I mean, I do wonder, like, am I going to be doing this in my 50s? And then people, like, we're going to have like. But I suppose no 20-year-olds will listen to 50-year-old men shouting at the clowns talking about football stuff.
I think we'll have to rebrand as one of those TikTok accounts where I say some really controversial opinions and it comes up just one word at a time, captions on TikTok, and Tony just there going facts. That's what we'll need to rebrand as. God, I hate thinking about doing. Imagine being like a 50-year-old who does a podcast.
I don't know. We're not kicking away from it. It's like 11 years away.
Show's only a couple of years away.
Telfer's managed to slag me 10 years in the future.
He's slagging all of us. We're all middle-aged men.
We're all going to be doing it, probably.
They have more money, please.
Thanks, Spears.
I've been private and boost my pension.
Graham Spears making a decent living out of it. He must be over 50, surely.
Yeah, but he's an actual journalist. I think that helps.
Fucking hell, all the strays I'm catching over here.
Well, you just do listicles about like the 8 worst players to play for Rangers. That's how you feel.
You're an actor. You'll be okay. But me, I'm just literally just a fat, overweight old man. Just like, can I play? I've got a point to say about. Remember Rocky Mashuri? Look how improved he was.
We'll move into the most disappointing player. Now, the criteria for this is they have to have played in the Scottish Premiership last season. They can't be a new signing. And this is actually quite a tricky one. Nominees are Lawrence Shankland, Heart of Midlothian, Adama Sidibe at St Johnstone, Jack Butland at Rangers, and Kenny Vargas at Hearts. We'll come to you. We've got 2 Hearts players on the list. So we'll come to yourself first, Fowler.
So when I put out the tweet for this asking for nominations, I used the video of Lawrence Shankland missing that penalty in Bruges, and there was some Hearts fans raging about Shankland being like suggested for this award. I think he's the clear winner. He scored 32 goals last season. I think how many did he get? Did he score any outside the league this campaign? Or was it just the 8 that he got in the league?
Who were they against?
So if he didn't score in any other competition, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, he went from 32 goals to 8.
And only scoring against Motherwell, Ross County.
Did he score in Europe? Did he score in Europe?
Surely.
Can't remember. He did actually. No, so I don't think. I think he only.
Oh no, he did. He scored. Sorry, he scored in the Scottish Cup against Aberdeen.
Oh, okay.
So he did. Right for the goals.
9. So 9. So was it 31 last season to 9 this season?
Yeah, it's a pretty. But what are your expectations for him?
4 of them are in the bottom.
The expectations weren't that he was going to score 30, but that he would definitely score 20 again. And Like the accusations of Hearts last season that they were a one man team. Sorry, I don't know how I could say that. One man team. And then Hearts fans were like, no, because we've got
George Grant.
Although I kept saying, no, we're a two-man team, Lawrence Shankland and Frankie Kent. But we did have other players that Hearts fans could point to and say, no, we've got a decent squad overall. But I think it was proven, especially by the start of this season, that Hearts were a one-man team, because as soon as Lawrence Shankland... Can you stop? What is this? As soon as Lawrence Shankland started to struggle, and he really struggled at the start of the season, Hearts just went in the toilet.
The Hearts did not help him at all by not signing another striker or allowing Tagawa to go. Tagawa wouldn't have been the answer, but having no fallback for him falling out of form, and it didn't help.
He had to play. He just had to keep on playing.
It made no sense at all.
And then it's also the fact that another guy on this list, guys who contributed quite well last season, took a step back. We were expecting Vargas to make a step up. I was expecting him to make a big step and really help Shankland. He didn't. He took a step back. Alan Forrest kind of just continued, or maybe slightly dipped.
He certainly dipped early in the season. He ended this campaign fairly well, but Forrest was poor.
And then you look at Liam Boyce didn't contribute until he almost when he left.
Grant regressed.
Barry Mackay started and then disappeared. Jitaro Oda didn't contribute at all, and then he was moved on. So Shankland was left in the lurch. He was put in. It's like, if you don't perform, then Hearts aren't going to perform, and that's what happened.
We said this on the top 12 strikers pod. It's like with Lawrence Shankland, it's one of those, there is so many variables and reasons for why it went wrong, and there's so many people to blame, including himself. He's not absolved of all blame, but there's so many ways to look at it. And Vargas is a really good one, because it's like that Hearts team lacked pace. And that was the main thing it lacks. That's what everyone says when they watch it. They're easy to play again. You're able to sit in, and and they're never going to be able to break it, or they're never going to be able to go on. So you can actually press, rather than sitting, you can actually press up. You can actually take risks against the Hearts team. So they struggle to really dominate games like they used to. But with Vargas, the whole point, big sign-in. He was given a year to basically settle in because he was coming from South America. So they designed it to allow that to happen.
Central America, Costa Rica.
Central America, sorry. And then he scored, and then they signed him for like half $500,000. And he becomes that, because of his attributes and what he's got in him, he became a massively key player for Hearts, and he never done it.
So there was two big moments, well, three big moments, one off the field and two on the field. On the field, he went through against Aberdeen and tried to scoop it, and then it went over the bar. And against Rangers, he had a couple of chances against Jack Butland at Ibrox, and this came after the Aberdeen miss, and it kind of just fed into this narrative that he can't finish, he's not delivering the big moments. And it didn't help that he had spoken in his homeland when he was on international duty, very naively, and basically talked about how he was ready to move on from Hearts and take the next step. He's like,
you're not taking this step.
Yeah, but you kind of need to back up with what you did last season.
But doesn't the usual thing of talking kind of down the standard of Scottish football as well?
Yeah,
it's like,
my favourite.
But you're not any good in it.
Yeah, my favourite. It's so good.
What would still say about going back onto Shankland? Shankland was still, despite how disappointing he's been, still one of Hearts' better players. And
Lawrence Shankland has had a better season than a lot of people think.
Yeah.
But we are talking about somebody who won the Players and Writers Player of the Year for a club like Hearts. To go from that to what he's done this season is a massive disappointment.
We'll stick with strikers then. What about Adama Sidibe at St Johnstone?
I thought he was really good in the second half of last season, and it's just no worked for him at all this campaign. I think he's been terrible for the most part. Most times I've watched him, he's just been one of the worst players on the pitch. His goal record's been crap. He works hard, but his touches all over the place as well. He got so many chances as well. Like, he just continued to get played all the time, and I could see why.
Because it fell out with Kipilka.
Kipilka. The other option was Mackenzie Kirk, who is good, but it's a kind of limited player in himself. He just he's all just about his pace, his hard work, and he's a better finisher. But he's not kind of much of a footballer, is he? So they kept having the Sidibe because he had the better potential, the better talent of the two, but he's just not shown it at all. It all stems back from last summer, where I think his head was turned by interest in him, and he's just never recovered the form he showed.
There's something I've never understood, because surely you can have your disappointment if you want to get a big transfer and it doesn't come off. You can be disappointed, but then it comes to, well, I'm still have to play for St Johnstone. I still have to deal with what's going on.
Cool, I've got interest in me. Surely I'm more motivated. Surely, brilliant. So people are actually noticing me. If I keep going, I'm definitely going to get a move.
I don't think he's been the most disappointing. And see if it was the award for the most frustrating player, he would be up there more. because watching him is just pure frustration, because he doesn't make if he was given 3 choices, he would make the 4th choice. So frustrating.
And it's annoying for St Johnstone as well, because the beauty was when they got Falicari in, you were thinking that it was going to unleash. They were unique for a St Johnstone team, is that their strikers were the main part of the team. They were the bit that you wanted to rely on, the thing they could be fun St Johnstone, who could maybe stay up through actually scoring loads of goals. And then Sidimi and Gabioga both at the same time. Probably because of responsibility is probably a big part of this. So players like that, it's easier when it's more jovial and people don't know of you, and you can do these sort of mental stuff, and you can take part in it rather than it being, well, you're one of the best players now, you're going to need to go and do that. And I think they've totally fallen under that expectation.
We've got 3 forwards on the list, but we also have Rangers goalkeeper Jack Butland, who at one point, I think it was perhaps the game against Celtic when Gareth Southgate was watching the last season, when he let a shot go underneath him. That seemed to be a real, like somebody flicking a switch in, because he's made a lot of errors this season. Lost his place to Liam Kelly in the squad. Uncertain future.
There's sometimes, just see mistakes from goalkeepers, and when we do the goalkeeper list, you'll watch through them all, and then there's some where you just think he didn't look great there, probably could have done better there. So many of Jack Butland's was that is egregious. That is really, really bad, and it's just obviously bad.
The reason why I wouldn't go for Butland is because of kind of what you said there, is that we saw this coming in the.
I don't think any of us saw Liam Kelly being number 1.
I don't think he would completely collapse to the point that he became not even good enough to play for Rangers.
Liam Kelly.
Let me rephrase that. We didn't see him dropping out the team for Liam Kelly. I think we saw him as not as good as his reputation was, and not as good as how he started last season in the final 2-3 months of the last campaign, where his form wasn't good, and it just flew under the radar because he had that really strong first impression, and that's kind of hard to break. You talked about this last season, the fact that you looked at Dessers and you looked at Butland. Dessers actually probably had the better season overall, but his first impression was terrible. So it took supporters a long time to come around. Butland was the other way, and that it was such a good start that people were like, oh no, he is good. But then he had the moments, and then the final one with the cup final with the mistake where either scored. So I didn't expect Butland to be great this season. And he's worse than I expected, but I never really had any hopes for him going in.
He was absolutely abysmal. It was like every single game you were able to. It felt like it must be kicking on 9 individual errors that led to goals. That's really bad at any level for your goalkeeper. We're moving into the territory where everyone, like the Hibs goalkeepers of the past, when we get into that, where everyone's turning up going, we'll take pot shots here. Like. I could argue that Butland became a big part of the reason that teams.
Sibio Markowski on the phone to Macalambi. Have you seen this Jack Butland boy? Jesus.
The teams maybe started to gain in confidence because you knew you were always going to get. You might even just get handed a goal anytime.
Take a pot shot. Because that's something he really struggled with. Sort of like pot shots. He could some of his leg work, especially.
His positioning, just like it's like there's what was the Celtic goal? The Kyogo goal was just like. He just came
I don't know when he passed it, basically passed it into the net.
There's lots of space there.
I think you're talking about when pot shots, when Hibs won at Ibrox, Dylan Levitt just flicks it up and just hits a shot off the edge of the box. It's right at him. And again, it is just, well, probably been taught before it, be brave, hit shots and that. Yeah. And when a player of that level, who we're talking about England's squad, is coming to the point where he becomes the guy that they're talking about for the pre-match, for preparing for a game, is one of the weak links, that's really fucking bad.
And I think it says maybe being smart after the fact, but it maybe says how poorly Rangers deal with transfers, that he was probably at his peak value in the summer there. They might have had the opportunity
his peak value was for last January, and there was interest in him. I think they might have even turned down a bid.
It's just Rangers, because they've got this problem that they have to be viewed as big and strong, and they can never. We don't
sell our play. We don't sell our best players.
I think it totally holds you back.
I think it's more about the fact that they're constantly trying to chase Celtic. So if you sell one of your better players,
it looks bad.
It is taking a step back. But
we'll buy other players with them. Prove this to the team. It's very simple. It's the way that all the other teams function.
So who are we going for then? Is it Lauren Shankland, Adama Sidibe, Jack Butland, or Kenny Vargas? We'll go to yourself first, Fowler. Shankland, Joel Sked.
It's difficult because of how good Shankland still was, just his all-round game, and I think he still contributed a lot. I'm actually going to go for Vargas because I had such high hopes for him this season, And I expected him to, having scored 9 goals last season, I expected him to get in the 15 range and him and Shankland just to be a really, really good partnership. And while Shankland had a massive fall off and was disappointing, he still contributed a lot to the Hearts season. Vargas did.
Tony, you can pick. I'll act as a tiebreaker here if there's a draw.
Another thing to say about Shankland, which we didn't mention, was that Scotland fans were raging that he didn't start any of the games at the Euros, and now he's not in the Scotland squad, and nobody's bothered about that.
This is the hardest one, because the case you make for Vargas, and then when I think about it, I'm really edging that, and I feel that Vargas almost is a big reason, but sort of wrecked Hearts' whole plan. And as a club and the team where they were going to go, he was the guy who's going to make that happen. But then when I was talking about Butland, I totally
Butland
convinced myself to go for Butland.
It's just how bad his mistakes were. Just like
I'm going to go for Butland now. So just, you have fun, mate.
I suppose it's just over a year since Mikey Stewart was saying during commentary on BBC that it was really strange that Butland wasn't in the England squad because he's a better goalkeeper than Jordan Pickford.
I'm going to go for I was swithering there, but that's just convinced me. Jack Butland, you have been nominated the most disappointing player of the year. Now we'll move into the most overachieving manager. This is very difficult. David Gray at Hibernian, Jim Goodwin, Dundee United, Jimmy Tilleen at Aberdeen, or Stephen Robinson at St Mirren. The 4 managers who made up the rest of the
because you could say like Robinson, like
I was going to just rule him out.
No, but the thing is, so is it what he's had to deal with this season? Not only handling Europe a lot better than not only handling Europe a lot better.
This is easy. We're just bringing loads of Arsenal.
But it's the point you're making, Fowler. It's just that those sort of intangible, literally managing a group of players, not just coaching them and putting the best 11 players out in the park, but when you've got 3 players that have to leave the club through off-field transgressions, how on earth do you deal with that?
I know, that's
he lost his assistant, did he not, as well?
Yeah, he did.
Season.
Dermot
he did. Forgot about that. And in top 6 for 3 years in a row for St Mirren.
Only Celtic and Rangers have done it the last few years.
Is it Robinson?
I mean, and the Tilleen one is, again, similar like Aberdeen. They are impossible because of what happened.
Yeah.
Because of that Schmeichel error, they are now impossible to analyse.
I suppose in terms of like overachieving, now I know it was very brief, but there was a point around September into October where perhaps people were getting a wee bit carried away and thinking, can Aberdeen legitimately put up a title challenge? Now, that proved not to be the case, but the fact that was even in discussion and folk were getting carried away.
Finished mid-table.
In hindsight, I just treat that the same as the terrible run that went on immediately after it, in that they were not as good as they looked at the start of the season, and they were not as bad as they looked after that. And ultimately, they probably should have finished ahead. They should have finished ahead Dundee United considering that squad. So he's actually underachieved in that respect.
That's what I mean.
You have to include the Scottish Cup final. You have to.
And then you've got Jim Goodwin, who it's also not just how good it is taking a promoted club into fourth. There's also that personal journey for Jim Goodwin to go
redemption.
Because I think it might have been 12 months ago we had said, I think it might have been in a review from the Terrace, we might have predicted that while Dundee United win the championship, get promoted into the top flight, Jim Goodwin wouldn't be the manager to see them there. And the fact that I think a lot of people might have expected Dundee United to finish about 7th, 8th, 9th, the fact that they are now playing European football next season, that's a pretty impressive achievement.
The 2 cases on make for Jim Goodwin is the expectation that he could be sacked early on in the season, because Dundee United fans weren't overly enamoured by the job he had done so far. He got them into the Premiership. And then you'll look, I think they got beat in the League Cup group stage by Spartans.
That was in the season before.
Season before, right? That was when they first went down.
Yeah,
I'm sure they had a poor result. They have a poor result in the League Cup. Anyway, coming into the start of the Premiership season,
did they not lose to or draw with Falkirk?
Yeah, well, they lost to Falkirk. They lost to Falkirk in the group stage, and then he came into the season, and you thought under a wee bit of pressure. And that Dundee game, the Dundee derby, first game of the season, you're thinking that's really big for him, because if he loses, then Dundee United fans are going, right, I'm not sure he is the right man to take us forward. They drew that, but then it was just steady progression. They had quite a relatively consistent season.
They were the most consistent team in the league, probably.
They and St Mirren. St Mirren
still had that big down. They had to make a big.
No, I wouldn't say that. Dundee United really struggled after.
They had that 5-game spell as well, yeah.
But I would also add in the fact that I just think Dundee United fans would have It was consolidation. Consolidation is what they wanted.
And now they got fourth.
And it's funny, like that. You talk about them not being enamoured by the Championship season. It does it. I feel like fans' minds have been poisoned by the way Hearts done it. The way Hearts went up for there. Because now I feel like every time a club of any sort of stature goes into the Championship, no matter how they get promoted, it's always thought of as a disappointment. Like Dundee United come on, it's always like, it wasn't very good. Or they both took them all the way. Yeah, they still got like 70 points. They still got promoted. I mean, is it really that bad? It feels like now, even though you've done well, these managers. Like,
you need a club like Hibs to show you how hard it is.
Yeah, like and even when Hibs done it under Lennon, it wasn't really done, and people were thinking that wasn't that special. But anyway, I digress.
And what about Hibernian under David Gray then?
I mean, if anyone has listened to podcasts, you've seen me rattling on about David Gray. I don't think.
Don't stop now.
I don't think there's, in terms of the impact that an individual had on the team, I don't know if there's anyone on that list that had as big an impact on the squad as what David Gray done in terms of. Obviously, because it was a shape change that had a huge impact on it. His man management was a big part of it. His substitutions changed towards the end. The way that he managed to use the entire squad, it being his first season. The way that he had to deal with being nudged out,
managing upwards as well.
Managing upwards because he's coming into a club it was going through a lot of changes. We can go into the pros and the cons of that, but they're not in negativity. And then obviously the horrible start, he had to deal with it. He'd done the sort of more mature than much more experienced managers him would have done, is when he didn't throw everyone under the bus. That was a huge thing not to do, and nearly any manager in his position would do that. I mean, we used sorry, I've forgotten his name when he went to Dunfermline.
Michael Tidser.
He did it because inexperience, and he'll regret that. He will regret that. But it's seen that him not doing that, and that maybe again shows the good thing about letting a guy coach in the background, maybe for a long time, and people rather than always this thing of the idea of that, a manager. He's part of the problem.
Yes,
Rather than is he not learning from all these guys' mistakes? Possibly.
I also thought with David Gray as well. No matter how bad
don't
things
slide tackle Jake Doyle Hayes.
over that bad run at the start of the season, never got too down about it. But even when the team were absolutely flying, never got too carried away with it all. Just a very sense of equanimity.
Yeah, and this is what, and I think I've spoken about this before. Is all of these things point to me thinking that David Gray might not just be a good Hibs manager. He might be a manager who goes on to have a good career. How high that is, please don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about managing Champions League or anything, but I'm talking like maybe like an Alex Neil or a manager of that ilk where Gray can go on. A decent
manager, you got down south, manage some big teams, make a bit of money off it.
And he'll have success and he'll do good things and maybe continue to do that. And hopefully in Scotland with Hibs having success. So yeah, in my opinion, Gray had more impact on the team than anyone else on this list.
Either you got anything to add about David Gray at Hibs?
Not, I think
Tony's covered it.
Okay then, so David Gray at Hibs, Jim Goodwin, Dundee United, Aberdeen's Jimmy Killeen or Stephen Robinson of St Mirren. This is difficult.
This is so hard.
Come to yourself first, Joe. Who are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for Jim Goodwin.
Jim Goodwin. Fair point. Fowler?
I was just thinking that I think they've maybe even got the kind of overall the weakest squad of the four. So I'm going to go for Goodwin as well. There you go.
That weakest squad bit is something that, because I can't argue that, because I was squealing about that during the season when I was getting annoyed at how Dundee United were doing and how they would drop off, and the fact that they did drop off and they did still manage to come back. I thought that was really big. You know what? Look, he's going to have it anyway, so why not?
Fair play. Congratulations to Jim Goodwin. You are the most overachieving manager. Now we'll move into the Andy Dornan Award for best bottom six player.
What does he do now? Is he retired? He must be.
I mean, this was 2005, was it not? When he was playing this?
No, it was around about the turn of the decade.
He was a Yankee.
2009, 2010.
He is 43 years old.
Okay.
Is that it?
Surely he has to work. He could have had that successful career.
Retired in 2018. He played for FC Boston.
Okay, fair play to you, Andy.
That's not MLS.
And how was he playing with a bottom half team and he sort of excelled?
Now, so the nominees for this award are Dundee forward Simon Murray, Benny Beningame at Heart of Midlothian, Ronan Hale of Ross County, or Lennon Miller at Motherwell. We'll start with Lennon Miller first, obviously called up to the Scotland squad for the games against Iceland and Liechtenstein. A young man who's got a very, very bright future ahead of him. Joel Sked, what's the case to be made for Lennon Miller?
Motherwell's best player?
Yeah, 18 years old, Motherwell's best player.
And
very high ceiling.
Very high ceiling. felt sorry for him this season because he's been surrounded by that mess.
Miller and 10 other players.
It's maybe been a good experience for him because he's had a wee bit of adversity.
He's learned resilience,
injury as well.
Carrying a team on his back as well.
Exactly that. So he is. I think this season will have done him the world of good, and the fact that he picked up both Young Player of the Year awards as well.
Yes,
just someone who I think would benefit from getting away from Fir Park and making that, except because we've seen it. He's done it at Motherwell. He's done it now 2 seasons, and you're just right. Usually, you want maybe someone to get 100 games there, but I think
no need for him.
And there's no need for him because he's so obviously his talent is so obvious. Like, right, let's move on and get
to that next level.
Now.
Let's get a better culture in. Let's get that.
It's really exciting, like the teams that he can go to, because it's not for the best world. He's not going to go to like Liverpool or Arsenal, Real Madrid, but it's that second or third strata of club around Europe. That is really exciting. Some of the names.
Got to go Italy.
Football romantic. Imagine him going and signing for like Atalanta, Lazio, or something like that. That's really, really cool. To go and play on the
Lazio doing a big a salute after winning against Roma.
totally sends him.
Lee Miller having to go to the BBC podcast. He didn't understand
what doing away in Hennessy. We're going to teach him about it now.
Well, if that's Lennon Miller, then what about Ronan Hale at Ross County?
I really like Ronan Hale. We were talking length about him on the top 12, and it was bizarre that he became almost like a squad player at Ross County for a period of the season. You had nowhere near good enough players to not be playing the guy who's good at finishing. And
Ross County and our team, I've paid much attention over the course of the season, but from watching the playoff final first leg against Livingston where they drew that 1-1, I think he scored the penalty to tie the match. He was by far and away the best player for County in that match.
And I think, again, when you're talking, obviously he's made quite late in his career this step towards playing at a level of the Scottish Premiership. And then he's had a bit of adversity. And he's also had to go to a bit where he's almost had to, he's the main goal threat. And when they lost Chilvers, it was like there was no one else there where you were like, this team has nothing apart from a striker who can shoot early. He's got an array of finishing. And I thought of him as quite a bit of maybe just a poacher when he first came in. And I think and I was talking to you about it, you were mentioning it, and to be fair to him, he put in the cross in the playoff final as well. There was a goal that maybe because of that adversity, he's managed to improve maybe faster than he would have if he'd been at a better team. And now he's got a really big move now for him at 26. He's got the stats to back him up this season for a shit team. Where he goes, does he go and be a squad player at like Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, or because it's towns like down south are looking for him, and you think a guy at that age and at fair play, I'd be chasing the money.
I think he is someone that both. I don't think he'll be going to Hearts, but I think Aberdeen and Hibs looking at him. Aberdeen especially because they're you look at what Nisbet. I think. I don't say they're the most similar players, but Nisbet leaving, you've got a guy on your kind of doorstep who is such a efficient and clean finisher. And I think I said when we did the podcast, you know what he reminds me of? The way David Goodwillie plays, and he's bustling and he's all action and he's physical and he's a nuisance to play against. And
what about Benny Beningame? Benny said for him.
I think Benny was Hart's best player over the course of this campaign. I know Penn Rice would be the other player to
I'm actually surprised to see him not in this.
I think Benny was banging on about him.
Benny had a stronger end of the season, so I think it's more recency bias.
I would still say overall, in terms of ceiling,
Bringham's a much better player than Penn Rice.
Bingham is a better player. He was somebody that last season, obviously, is when he came back from his lengthy injury, and he was so curtailed. He couldn't play. He could barely play 90 minutes, let alone 90 minutes, like 2 games in a row, like midweek to the weekend. You had to drop Benny, you had to take him off.
Just like that. Imagine that. What's Benny Beningame like? He's curtailed. That's a horrible adjective.
First adjective.
He also, when he first arrived at Hearts, he had this incredible ability to make a tackle, like when he was diving in, you were like, no, don't do that. But then he would not only win the ball, he would actually like kind of hook it and come away with it.
The elastic legs are the cool players.
And last season, I think he struggled to do that because he just lost something from the injury, he lost a bit, and I thought maybe that player is never coming back. But apparently he just needed time to get up to speed, because as soon as he did this campaign, he was just like excellent in every game.
He's taken on. It feels like he's become more of a leader and taking more responsibility in the middle of the pitch. He is so intelligent with and without the ball. He reads the game so well. He's a really, really good defensive midfielder, and he recycles the ball really well. But he's added a bit more going forward this season, where he's always had it, but he's just it's almost like in his mind he's like, right, I just get the ball and I just play a short pass and keep it simple. But he's got the ability to drive, dribble, because he's got really good close control and he can get away from players. Snake hips, and he can just drop a shoulder in his way, and he's got good vision. The thing that holds him back for me is his not inabilities, probably his kind of lack of willingness to do this, but just to play a wee bit longer. So he wants to play a 6-yard pass. He doesn't switch the ball quickly enough. And when we've got Benny and Devlin in the midfield, it's like they take like 6 short passes, play like 2 passes.
And then the teams are all set up. Because you do it with the best teams, especially in Scottish football, getting it from right to left quickly.
And also neither of them are a goal threat at all.
No. And
it's hard to even imagine Benny shooting. There was a moment. I wouldn't even think it would reach the goal.
There was a moment against Motherwell at the end of the season. He got in within, got near the box and the crowd shouted shoot, and then he started laughing while he had the ball.
Is this not a game where you were trying to get into the top 6?
No, this was after. And then he just passed it sideways. But he is such a joy to watch.
I think he could go further. And you were talking. I think we spoke about this in a podcast before about the ability to drive forward, and Shankland or Vargas could be playing on the shoulder, and him being actually able to thread those balls through, like you're mentioning. I'm always thinking about Dylan McGeoch when I see him when he was at his best, and obviously that he could add more going forward to it. But Hearts might be one of these ones where the injury problems were frustrating at the start, but they could end up being quids in because you get him on a longer contract, and suddenly you've got a player who's probably above what you should be able to have, but you keep him for longer because other teams aren't willing to take the risk on him.
He could play for Celtic and wouldn't look out of place in the midfield.
And what about Simon Murray? Could he play for Scotland and not look out?
I hope so.
It's
kind of be enjoyed, Craig.
It's come at the wrong time, I think, for Murray. When people talk about him potentially Scotland squad, like we're looking at friendlies, we're looking at young players. If we had, if at this point the next couple of international games were like a big fixture, like a playoff or something, I would say Simon Murray should be in the Scotland squad because he does have that kind of chaos, that pace, that's something that translates to a higher level for these kind of one-off games.
Yep.
I'm not saying they could go to the English Premier League and play well at all, but for international football.
For the friendlies, give Lennon Miller a shot.
Yeah.
Give
Kieran
Tommy
Bowie
Conway a couple of goals. Let's see what Kieran Bowie can do. I think, I feel like when I've been invited on to the BBC Sports Scotland football podcast a number of times they ask about Simon Murray, and every time I must sound like I really dislike the guy. So he's never going to play for Scotland. I think he's a great football player. I think he's a really strong season for Dundee, capped with an excellent performance in the Dundee derby. But is he a viable candidate for this award?
I would go for him for the
player.
I would go for him for the reason that Lennon Miller missed a bit of time through injury. His form took a wee bit to get up to speed after that. Ronan Hale, as we mentioned, spent a little bit out of the kind of in and out of the side. Benny had a slow start to the campaign. Simon Murray was great on the first day, and he was great at the end.
There's no debate of who had the best season out of the 4 players on here. It's Simon Murray, and it's just Simon Murray, his career, we were trying to figure him out. His career, I was thinking, did he waste time in the lower leagues when he could have been playing in the higher leagues, or did the lower leagues make him at that time? It's hard to compete, because even when he came into the Premiership, he still had a bit of time before he got good again, and then he had that spell at Hibs. He's an impossible player to pin, but he's brilliant. He's been absolutely amazing, talismanic. He does everything that you want as a fan when you're watching him. But now it's not just a guy running about like a fly the whole time. It's now a guy who's also rattles in the goals of all types, and he's deadly.
He's gone from he has gone from a good Championship striker to someone you think, he's capable in the Premiership, to being a solid Premiership striker, to just being a really good.
It's one of the best players, one of the best strikers in the league.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm not sure he wins this award, but there is definitely another award that he wins. He wins for me. Okay,
well, and I think we know what that one's going to be. We'll come on and talk about that towards the end. But if it's not Simon Murray, then Joel, who is it?
Between Benny and Lennon Miller, and I am biased, so I'm going to go for Benny Benningham.
Benny Benningham, Craig Fowler,
Simon Murray,
Tony Anderson. Simon Murray, congratulations! You have won.
Lennon Miller is the real answer. The best player in the bottom 6 is Lennon Miller, but
Then why is he not winning then?
They didn't have the best season.
Fine, okay, that makes
Out
sense.
of the three, they had a very good season, but not out of the four of them.
Fair play. The Andy Dorman Award for the best bottom six player goes to Dundee striker Simon Murray. Now we'll move into the Shane Duffy Award, recently rebranded Shane Duffy
So he
Award.
got it. Yeah,
for
that
the worst
got it. That
signing.
was, you're allowed to change
But no,
there.
I think it was just
No,
but
but
it was just the worst signing.
All right.
But, but what I was saying, there was nobody called it before. It was just worst signing.
Yeah, right, okay.
It was just the worst signing. But I
And
mean,
then Duffy
after that
made it his own.
season,
And now that's it forever. It's
so when there's little like grandkiddies listening to this, like Daddy, who is Shane
Shane
Duffy?
Duffy.
Like, come and sit up and let me.
I've got a story for you.
Let me tell you all about Shane Duffy.
Don't say his name in my house.
let me tell you all about Celtic 2020-21.
Remember Diego Laxalt was getting his hair braided?
Oh, he was absolute pish.
By Shane Duffy.
Didn't he have the hair braided and glasses as well?
Yeah,
Yes.
he looked
Diego Laxalt felt
He had
almost
the
like
vibe.
it felt almost like a plant for Celtic fans to appreciate Greg Taylor more. You think his crossing's bad? Well, wait to see this guy.
And yeah, for Celtic dads, not going to appreciate Laxalt's general vibe.
Yes.
No.
Aye. It looks like he goes to Carly Rae Jepsen concerts and stands really close to the front.
And moans if someone knocks in
Yeah,
there.
he's got the latest Chapel Roan album under his arm.
but enough about Joel.
He's describing himself.
I went to see Carly Rae Jepsen last year. She was fantastic. But anyway, the nominees are Kevin Van Veen at St Mirren, Joseph Bursick at Hibernian, Nedim Bajrami at Rangers, and Kyle Cameron of St John's. I mean, when I said Kevin Van Veen, there was a collective intake of breath.
Yeah.
You can't really.
This has nothing to do with anything on
So
the
we cannot say anything that obviously assumes or doesn't assume any kind of guilt whatsoever for what he was accused of. However, what you can say is that it was an extremely embarrassing situation for St Mirren to even have a signing linked with that kind of behaviour. Whether it happened or not, we don't actually know. That's for the courts to decide.
Oh, that
And
journalism
also-
degree coming out great there.
And
Brilliant.
also, he was fucking pissed.
He was
Before
rubbish
then.
I mean, he was poor when he came back, one of that loan spell at
With
Kilmarnock,
Kelly, yeah.
wasn't he? And I suppose that I don't know what the thinking might be behind it. They just said, well, you know, he had a poor
but he
season at
did.
Groningen. You know that Kilmarnock's a spell weak, and he's been great in Scottish football, but it just mean
Was
like
he-
did he even play for St Mirren?
He played a few times and he did nothing.
He played up front at Tynecastle, and I think it might have been the worst performance I've seen from an individual last season.
Was he not fighting with
I've
fans?
seen a lot of bad individual performances at Tynecastle last season.
Was he not fighting with fans at Groningen as well, squaring up to fans? The fallout with the chairman.
He's a troubled individual.
Yeah, and so like we're going like so really for St Mirren, you're like, have we done our due diligence here?
Yeah, for quite a community club.
Yeah,
as well.
and obviously, and then there's they also think the big glaring thing going. He had one good season. It is an absolute outlier of his entire career. But obviously, it's his size and his style always makes you think, well, that could be handy. But it never happened. But it depends how you want to look at it. I wasn't overly disappointed with what Van Veen. I think Van Veen would have been pish on the pitch anyway.
But does that not make it a worse sign? Like in terms of this is not the most disappointing player. This is worse signing.
Yeah.
Does it not make it a worse signing that
That
you
was
think when
stupid.
it's as soon as you sign him,
Giving you in
like,
the
why are you
face.
doing that?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But I suppose at least they were able to cut their losses really quickly with it.
Yes,
so
aye.
it's not like an albatross that had to play
Aye,
up
and he was a
over the
lone
course of the
player.
campaign.
I usually go for permanent ones with this because they usually do more damage to the team overall.
Yeah, well, we'll stick with lone players for the time being. Then what about Joseph Bursick, Hibernian's goalkeeper? One for Club Bruges, wasn't it?
Yeah, and
Can we say if it wasn't for him, Hibs might have finished second?
I do believe that. I do believe that. Because all Hibs had to do was have a normal start of the season. Didn't have to be good. It would be 4 wins in 14. Hibs would have been right on Rangers' arse. And Rangers did not look a team that would have been comfortable with that scenario. It's quite sad, never mind just Hibs, but even the falling away of Aberdeen, if you put your Scottish football hat on, is the fact that Rangers, we had the perfect storm of Rangers were there for the taking. This season. They were there ready. They were ready to implode, and no one was. But because we had the most ridiculous seasons of the clubs below them doing this, then we never got to experience what could have been.
I remember looking at Hibs early, like their really bad start to the season, and being the boring bastard that I am, looking at the underlying numbers, and they were good, and just like, why are they not winning games? And then you just look at who's in goals, and that was a key factor to it. Just like,
Mass panic. All these last minute goals, even when it's not his fault, it's because he's behind them.
He didn't play again after November, and there was still 2 goals this season where he was essentially tackled for the ball to go in the back of the net.
He was. This is the thing. Like the other goalkeeper, the classic Hibs goalkeepers that we mentioned earlier, all of them. But this one, there was no redeeming features whatsoever. How has this man been employed to be a goalkeeper? He can't do any of the listed job specs of being a goalkeeper. He wasn't good with his feet.
Yeah.
He wasn't particularly good at shot stopping. The one when St Mirren went to Easter Road when they just ran over the halfway line and he closed off the front post. You're like, well, that's, and he just stepped to the left right as if it was shooting. It just went through him. Like, get in the way. Get in the way.
I was just double checking. There's another missed moment from Hearts was we played at Easter Road and Bursic just had a really comfortable game.
No, but even then he was partially at fault because he made an arse of
the goal that led to the throw-in.
Because the mass pass, and it happens so quick. The one at Dundee when he passed it and it passed back to him and the tackle went, he's screaming. It's maybe Obita or Nicky Cadden. He's absolutely.
It wouldn't have been Obita
because he'd been sent off. Yeah, he was absolutely screaming at him for the pass back. You're like, well, we can maybe find some sort of world where that wasn't maybe the optimum thing to do. But there's no reason for you to get tackled.
It's the fact that the centre defenders have to have a word with each other, or even just think in their head, right? Anytime there's a shot goes past us, we need to be ready for the rebound because he's not catching it. I just imagine having that weighing on your mind.
But there's the spilling.
There's no worse feeling. See, like rudimentary things like free kicks and corner kicks that happen every day in football when you think this is going to lead to a goal here because the guy in goals is just absolutely hopeless. I imagine what it's like to watch in the stands, but imagine to be a central defender or a marker in that position. We think, well,
your heightened anxiety when you're trying to do things. Then you do stupid things like pull people down for penalties. Like all those things start happening because you're not. And with Bursic, it is really like because I think he was playing in England, and then they were saying he was topped up, and I remember hearing noises that he wasn't particularly good. And then he went to Bruges, and they wanted it. It's like a guy who's and if this happens, they seem to just get away with it, and their name stays as a young player because when he came in, he was thought of as the coup, and then obviously Jordan Smith, you were like, Hibs just he's the most backup goalkeeper that's ever backed up. So they just had to do it. So the idea was obviously this is definitely our guy because we're not even going to bring in anyone to really challenge him.
Smith was almost like that. Who is the boy that was at Liverpool for years and even ended up at Celtic as a backup goalie, and he was only ever a backup goalie?
What a life he can lead.
Charles and I don't
know.
Charles in charge.
he got sacked from the club, didn't
because
he, for laughing during a Hillsborough memorial. Absolutely.
Warner, Warner.
Out of all the clubs.
But I suppose that kind of going on, but that's a key position for Hibs to address in the summer's new goalkeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought, like the Jordan Smith, I thought went way above what I expected. He still made the errors, but he also his shots up. So I don't want to get this and criticising Jordan Smith, but I still definitely would want to get another goalkeeper who's probably better than him. But Bursic, was unbelievable.
He's not after the A-League goalkeeper of the year.
2 year on the bounce.
Danger.
2 years on the bounce. The A-League goalkeeper of the year.
And I seen Nathaniel Atkinson in the team of the year as well.
That's it. It's absolutely meaningless. But yeah, Bursic. If we hadn't stopped him, Hibs were going to get relegated. if we hadn't stopped him, his tyranny.
It's like no one can stop him from playing in goals for Hibs. No one's able to step in and say, "Listen, we're going to put Jordan Smith in instead." Yeah. If that's a very, very strong argument for Bursic. What about Nedim Bajrami?
He's just the one that cost a lot of money and he's crap. It's like, was it £5 million? I was actually really impressed with him the first time I saw him. It was one of the Rangers European games. I can't remember who it was against, but it was one of the games where they missed about 4 1-on-1s. They ended up winning the match, but they could have won it like absolutely easily. And he really stood out in terms of like his technique and his quality. Just another one of these guys, you sign them and like they don't fit Scottish football at all. He's just kind of lackadaisical, does nothing, and just a big waste of money so far.
So you could file a lot of
exactly. I've heard it all
signings
before.
Under that. And Kyle Cameron at St John's, I'm right in saying he was a centre back that came in on loan and was installed as captain.
I'd like to make a case for him because it's possible that he has played a huge role in relegating the club that he signed for.
Oh, that's a big call because there was a lot of
contributory
factors for St Johnstone getting rid
of. There was a lot of
right centre half, but maybe that's part of it. Yeah.
But what did St Johnstone finish bottom by in the end? 3 points? 3-4 points?
Is that all it was in the end?
Aye, they still had it was only the second. It was only the second last game where it was confirmed they were relegated, was it not?
5 points.
5 points. They were 5 points away. So if they managed to sign a centre half who was their captain, who was somebody good, is that not worth at least 5 points over the course of a season? Whereas Cameron was pish, and not only that, and
how many games did he play?
He played.
Compute him in my brain, but I thought when you said it, I was like, "Oh shit, I've got no notes and don't remember who that is."
He played consistently in the first half of the season. He was got rid of him in January, and then he also apparently had a bit of a kind of interview afterwards where he kind of almost made it out as if Scottish football was easy when he was.
It's so good. It's so good. It's like an infection of people where they're just like, oh, it's shite. But that makes you shite then.
When we talked about with the Van Veen one in terms of signing a player who you think, why are you signing him? He's crap. As soon as you signed Cameron, I looked at him and I was like, he's played his entire career in like League Two in the National League, and you're bringing him in and making him captain. He does not seem like the required standard, and he wasn't.
Right. Does anyone have anything to add about Kyle Cameron, Joe?
No, I was just worried when he was talking about playing his whole career in League Two. Hearts have just announced the signing of a boy that we just signed from League Two. So
to be fair, he is young.
Oh, I made him captain as well.
He is younger, and Cameron I think was like 28. I think when you're a younger player, you sign them for that level, you could obviously see a bit of growth and potential. Whereas if you sign somebody who is undoubtedly at the peak of their careers and they've never moved above that level, what can you expect?
Already. Actually,
Tony is
says his whole thing about Kyle Cameron.
Tony
announces that actually it's great League Two.
Tony, this man is a 6'3" centre half who apparently we're going to play in the middle of the park. I'm happy with that. Big physical back. Big physical heart.
What a horrible existence Hearts is.
So who wins the Shane Duffy Award for worst signings? It Kevin Van Veen, Joseph Bursick, Nedum Bajrami, or Kyle Cameron?
You made a really good go at Cameron there, so I'm not against it, but I'm going to say Bursick had to suffer through it. And nothing, there's no change that was more stark than lose every game, take him out, win every game. Nothing can be cleaner.
I was coming into this going to vote Kevin Van Veen, but it has to be Bursick.
Yeah, I'm happy enough for that.
Play Joseph Bursick, we hardly knew ye. Right, we're moving into the discovery of the year. The criteria for this is the player in question had to be 21 or under when the season started, had started 9 games or fewer at this level, and was not a new signing. So, the nominees are James Wilson of Heart of Midlothian, Bobby Wales at Kilmarnock, Ewan Wilson at Motherwell, or Samuel Cleal Harding of Dundee United.
So, there's two we could probably eliminate, and that's Wilson and Cleal Harding, even though
which Wilson?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Ewan Wilson. Wilson came into the team, he had some good performances. I don't want to be harsh about a young player, but I'm not entirely convinced in terms of his long-term prospects as somebody that could go beyond the Scottish Premiership, even if he is capable of a sustained career at this level. He probably is, but I don't think he's
wrong with it.
I don't think he's ever going to be much more than that. Cleal Harding, I've not seen too much of, but I did see him in the final game of the season against Aberdeen, where he was very good, and he had some good performances after coming into the team and
did well at Kelty Hearts. I know that's different level. He did well at Kelty earlier.
United really needed him to come in and make that impact as well, because that defence was starting to be a bit of a mess due to injuries and Kevin Holt leaving. So he did have a significant impact, and somebody looking forward to seeing a bit more of next season. But he only really came into the team towards the end of the campaign. So
if we're eliminating then Ewan Wilson and Samuel Cleal Harding, then it's a straight shootout between James Wilson at Hearts and Bobby Wales at Kilmarnock. Bobby Wales has just moved on to Swansea as well. Sad really to see him go. We'll start with Bobby Wales. Why should he be Discovery of the Year?
So I think out of him and Wilson, I think that Wales is the more talented footballer. Mm-hmm. What I would say is that I think Wilson looked more at home in a kind of position and a setup within the team. So Wales was originally kind of played up front, but still doesn't really know how to be a striker at this level yet. He was very good at Alba last season, so that's where his kind of long-term future lies. But McInnes ended up having to use him in the wing quite a lot, and he was good there. But I think that if you're making the case for Wilson, you'd be like, he was somebody that had to kind of like lead the line alongside like Shankland or Cabangu for a lot of the season for Hearts and done a very good job at it.
It's the thing with Bob, to go back to Bobby Wales, just like the sadness about him going, it's because it's just like he's too young to go make that move. As you mentioned, he's very much learning his trade in terms of how to run a specific position. And
another season.
And also because it's just like a unique, extremely cool player that's come through that we don't, it's not the type of player we normally, obviously I've said it before, like you just, to give people an idea, it's like, there's shades of like Bergkamp and stuff like that style of player. He's quite slow, but it's like all about touch. It's all about technique.
Who did he score against? There was a ball and he sort of...
Home St Johnson, perhaps.
It was the turn, the touch inside and the finish was sublime. A really good goal.
You rarely see that for a young player coming through. And of all the strikers that we've seen coming through, it's normally not like that. It's like maybe brute force and they're bigger than what they should be at an age. But him, it's all about talent and he needs to be brought on. And I feel like for him to really hit that, it's games that are going to be the thing that's going to help him develop rather than just purely coaching. So I feel like it's a really bad move.
I think when you look at him, when you look at James Wilson and Bobby Wills, it's really interesting to see how their development's going to go because they've chosen two different paths. And James Wilson's done it well. Is like he holds a lot of the cards, and he's just been signing 1-year deals with Hearts, and it's Hearts would love to tie him down for longer, but he'd be daft to sign a long-term deal with Hearts.
It's a smart way that young players don't do. They could just keep signing 1-year deals and just go, it's a shite for us, but I'd still prefer to see them.
So Hearts have got him for 2 years, so they're still protecting their asset to an extent, but it's allowing Wilson to go, you know what, I will play. I'm not tied down, and if I get a big move.
On top of James Wilson as well, he was Scotland's youngest ever cap.
That was very much like in case you become good.
Let's stop Ireland and Wales from moving the cap.
I think there is to that.
Wales got overplayed this season.
Is that to an extent with Wilson with his Scotland cap, but Steve Clark really likes him. And the fact that he's still in the Scotland squad this summer when he's already played for the under-20s, so he thought, right, just play for the under-20s, have the summer off.
I'm not entirely happy about that. I think he could do with the rest.
I think he could do with the rest, but I think that says a lot about his standing.
Yeah, I think he's been overplayed at Hearts. I think to the point that you worry because he had a pretty big dip in form when the goals was hanging out. And like you're saying, he was. But then there's the other side of it. His development came on so much because he was having to do things that Hearts probably wanted to use him as like a impact goal scoring striker, but they ended up having to use him all the time, which maybe brings on his back to goal game, all that stuff. I don't normally get at that age.
I don't think he's been overplayed because you have to remember he spent the first chunk of the season playing in the B team and kind of dropping in and out. And
I suppose he only really started playing every week around about October or November time. And
they worked a lot on James Wilson with his. See, if you're not going to win a header, use your body. Know how to use your body. Felt sorry for him towards the end because, the way that Hearts played, that he had to drop out the team. But when it got to the diamond towards the end of the actually, he was essentially playing as a right winger. Him and Cabangu were playing as wingers.
And that was, the diamond ended up affecting him because he ended up playing too far away for goal, and then that ruined his confidence because strikers, if they're not scoring goals, will always beat themselves up. Every retired striker says that. They're like, you're not happy at the end of the day if you haven't scored a goal in a game, regardless of what the result is. But the reason why that system was used in the first place was because it was for Critchley to get in 3 of the best players in the team, which were Shankland, Cabangu, and Wilson.
But with Wilson as well, just for that age, because I've obviously people saying overrated about him, but I'm always thinking like for a 17-year-old to have scored like 8 goals. You barely normally see a 17-year-old get on the pitch. And the examples I use with friends of mine with Hibs, I was like, Riordan, O'Connor, who were really good players. We didn't really see them coming in until they were like 19, 20, when they started to like Jason Cummings even. I mean, nowhere near this level, but we don't really see these guys till they get to that age, whereas Wilson's already forced his way in to being used as quite a useful player and at some points being really leaned on. That speaks a lot to how good he must be, even if I don't witness it on the pitch every time.
I think it was Craig Anderson who put this stat. I think it was in the group chat. I think it's only before the 17th birthday, only Gold and Stephen Fletcher had scored more goals than
Fletcher went on to have a better career than all the guys that I mentioned.
So who is it then? Is it James Wilson or is it Bobby Wales? Craig Fowler, go to you first.
I was actually leaning towards Wales, but these guys have made the kind of shout for Wilson a bit better, and I forgot about the Scotland thing as well. So let's go for Wilson.
Tony.
Bobby Wales.
Joe, you've got the casting vote here.
Wilson, you.
Oh, yeah. James Wilson.
I knew he was going to do it, so I didn't have to break cover.
Fair enough. Now we're getting into the good stuff here. This is the Stuart Armstrong Award for Most Handsome. The nominees are Dimitar Mitov of Aberdeen, Jonah Ayunga at St Mirren, Craig Gordon at Hearts, and Cyril Desser's lovely eyes, the Rangers
Let's have a good
striker.
look at Ayunga.
Well, this doesn't make for good, good
But
audio.
we've got there's cameras here. That's why it took an hour for us to get started.
Fowler, you're the only person. You must have had a look at these prior to going on this. So who are you making?
Because Clark Robertson was one that was stated quite a lot, and he does go out with Laura Anderson, who was on Love Island. But I was just like, no, I don't really see it.
Ayunga is bloody handsome.
Yeah, Ayunga is a handsome man.
Look at it again. You are nice. You are nice.
Okay, well, then who would you go for then, Fowler? Because we can discuss these players one by one, or we can just ask you who would you go for?
Either Ayunga or Dessers. Dessers has got really nice eyes. Dessers has got really nice eyes and a really nice smile.
He does.
I'm going to go for Dessers for that. Really nice features.
That's it. In the Craig Gordon, it's getting a bit boring.
Yeah,
and that's all like Joe Newell.
Also, I'm sick of his face because I don't want the face to be standing in goals for Hearts anymore.
He's signing you a contract.
I could not believe it. Take a day off, man.
Sure, no, it's a 1 year deal, isn't it?
Yeah, a 4-year deal. After looking at that, I'm going. I think I've seen Ayunga before, obviously, but getting a proper really zeroing in. Yeah, I'm a fan. Sculptured beard as well. A man who looks after himself.
Ayunga, he'd be the type of person who's like, I'm not going to stand next to you.
Yeah. Why?
Because you're a big strapping handsome lad, and then
right. I'd have gone for Dessers. I agree. Dessers got a really nice smell. He's got very watery sort of eyes. You kind of get locked into them. Yeah.
It's like the defenders are obviously nowhere near him, even though he still fucks it up every time.
And on top of that as well, he's like, I can imagine if you're a Rangers fan having to watch him every week, you're perhaps a bit less enamoured with him. But he's a lot of fun.
He's brilliant. He's good.
Oh, he's great.
He is good.
I love that. This is a theory now that the reason why the defenders are never anywhere near him and he's got loads of space is because he's too handsome, so they don't want to stand beside him to be compared.
No, because
Declan Gallagher's just like, you're all right.
They get lost in his eyes, and then they're like,
they're hypnotised.
They don't react well, and then Dessa's like, woo, pops in.
The most thing I would like to see in Scottish football was Morelos come back and Morelos and Dessers up front.
This is the 49ers, if you're listening. Even though Morelos that sounds like Morelos has done some pretty bad stuff, it's been away, obviously, so maybe not.
Remember when people thought that a Celtic fan had tampered with the brakes in his car? A private investigator bugging him.
You just cannot. The rivalry there, it is meant
unrivaled.
It's silly.
Anything to be said for Dimitar Mitov at all? He's just a sort of generic.
He looked pretty cool with that bucket hat. After the Aberdeen game, I was enjoying his look there when someone posted that as the image, and I thought he is pretty handsome, but he's nowhere near on the levels of Ayunga, for example.
So who are we going for then? Is it Jonah Ayunga?
It's because it's Tony and I voted for Ayunga.
Well, there we go.
There you go.
Jonah Ayunga, congratulations. You've won the Stuart Armstrong Award for Most Handsome. Definitely the most prestigious award on this list.
When did it become most handsome? When did it become the Stuart Armstrong Award?
I think that was when we first introduced it. Okay. Stuart Armstrong won the first one, and then that was it. I think he won it 2 years in a row.
Before that,
him and Matt O'Reilly are the only players to win it 2 years in a row.
Matt O'Reilly looks like Eugene Toombs from the X-Files. I couldn't get on board with him.
Because Amy was a big driver of O'Reilly. She was a big,
she's a
big fan.
Did we not? We voted on it last year as well, did we not? I'm sure we did. It was me, you, and Sean. The cheekbones.
Joe Newell will be back next season from injury. Never will remember. Floppy hair.
Anyway, listen.
Too long a face.
We're 3/4 of the way through, and we're going on to everyone's looking at the time.
I'm sweating as well. It's very hot in here. I'm going to see Robbie Williams after this as well, so I want to get out in my garden and just drink.
Just thinking when I record the big lower league preview podcast with Sean, this is where we're about like 1/6 of the way through. Through this at the moment.
There's levels that I could never get to.
Oh dear. Anyway, we're moving on to best signing, and the nominees are Dimitar Mitov again from Aberdeen, Nicky Cadden at Hibernian, Killian Phillips at St Mirren, and Simon Murray of Dundee. But we'll go to Dimitar Mitov first. A very obvious signing was a standout at St Johnstone.
annoyingly.
Aberdeen paid quick, was it 300 grand? 300 grand for him?
If we're talking about worst signings, when you know at the time that's a bad signing, when as soon as Aberdeen signed Meatoff, you're like, that's a great signing.
Just like, what's nobody doing at Hibs? Why are they not on the phone?
Well,
why is there not why are St Johnstone not able to do some sort of a bidding war here between your Hibs? If he's willing to go to Aberdeen, why is it not a bidding war between the three of us?
Coach
the goalkeeping coach went from St Johnstone to Aberdeen, and then Aberdeen somehow found out about the release clause in his contract.
That can't be right, because an agent would surely, Meatoff's agent would be hawking
probably
around and saying, I know that's a nice story, but if we're talking
thanks.
but that's his agent.
But maybe you're not like
this guy's got a release clause.
But maybe as an agent, that's kind of a practice that can get you in trouble with clubs if you've got clients.
You're hot.
Whereas if you're a goalkeeping coach, you just go to another club.
I'd be like, I understand you're angry, but it's literally my job.
Yes.
What else am I meant to be doing?
I'm not going to tell anyone about your release clause. You're going to stay at St Johnstone for the rest of your life. But I mean, I suppose that he proved himself to be a good goalkeeper, and that was capped with his performance in the Scottish Cup final, and particularly the penalty shootout, save the penalties from Callum McGregor.
Yeah, Aberdeen don't win a cup without Meatoff, so I'm going to vote for him.
And great save as well for Maeda. And
that was the bit where I knew things were going wrong.
Phil makes a really good point about the inverse of someone being you obviously going to be a shit signing. You obviously knew he was just going to be an improvement on what Aberdeen had before. It was Kel Roos, wasn't it? Because Kel Roos had the drop off of the second season.
Yes, he did.
And but
playing for Triestina now in Serie C.
And Meatoff is just, you look at him, he's just an obvious good goalkeeper, presence, fills a goal, makes good decisions,
just
good reflexes,
and makes match-winning saves.
And the stuff we're talking about, the inverse of Josip Bursic. when balls go into the box, like, oh my goodness, this is going to a goal. It just comes and plucks out there and just makes everyone, the defenders.
Everything's fine. Calm down, everyone.
He's that. Nicky Cadden, you've described him a number of times as the most obvious signing that any team could make, given that his brother was already his twin brother was already
on the other wing.
And this is another reason why I didn't think.
No, Nicky Cadden's younger than Chris Cadden.
No, they're twins.
I think they are.
They're definitely twins.
He's never always phoned this guy.
They're definitely twins.
With Nicky Cadden, because this is another reason that I don't know how much Hibs were desperate for him, because he came in late in the day, and if they really wanted him, he was out of contract and his brother's there. I think this could have been dealt with very, very quickly. And he came in, and with Nicky Cadden, we're watching him now, I cannot believe a guy with that skill set has been jobbing about the lower leagues.
A bit of a late bloomer in Livingston, Greenock Morton. I actually remember being at a game where Alloa took on Morton at the Rex, and he scored this goal. I think he won Player of the Month, actually. He was on a view from the terrace, where it's the shot, it's an amazing shot for the volley from the edge of the box, and it was one of those ones that bends outside the post and comes back in. But then, to go down to Forest Green Rovers,
he's just jobbing about. And don't get me wrong, he was at Barnsley and stuff, he was highly thought of, he was popular with the fans. But and then off to another team like that. But when you've got crossing is one of the most difficult things to do. So even if you throw Nicky, and I think he does a more game, his work rate's unbelievable. He's got his acceleration's good. So rather than it not be over a thing, but he can buy himself a yard to put in these crosses. For someone to have that good a cross, you think surely he's good enough to be a squad player at a relatively high level with that.
Is it maybe a reason? I don't know whether he maybe did play at this position down south already, but is it maybe because the wing back position was just perfect for him?
Maybe it's not. I'm sure he might have had a role in it, but I think he played more as a winger and then he played as an auxiliary left back sometimes. So maybe you're right. It's because
they was said the wing back's a much better position for his skill set than a winger is. Yeah, because he's getting the ball deeper and then he's able to cross from different positions.
And like I said, the acceleration in that role as well means that he can
build up, he can open up space.
And if he buys himself, and he can also cross from anywhere. So if he buys himself a yard and it's still 30 yards for goal, the angle, the ball's still going to be brilliant. And it's just the variation in the cross is so much fun. The ball comes over, he'll do these sliced volley ones and every type of it, and he scores free kicks.
You described him as David Beckham-esque. And I know sometimes we can get a bit carried away, but that's I
think it's because once it added the work rate, because obviously something Beckham became famous for later, it's never appreciated. And that's sometimes even the guy, he works so, and his defensive responsibilities, the times that I see him tracking the runner at the back post or even come at the front post to clean up and block balls and win headers and that, he's been absolutely tremendous. And I did not see it come in from anywhere when I saw the CV when he was coming in.
Doofus brother that's been brought into.
And it's funny how they're twins, but their skill sets couldn't be any less different.
Chris can't cross for shit.
There's spells where as a Hearts fan, you look at Hibs player and you get annoyed by what they produce. So like Derek Riordan, his ability to shoot and score from outside the box. Then John McGinn, with his ability to win free kicks with his fucking arse. I was so frustrated. And now you got Nicky Cadden, just he's crossing. He's like, just don't let him cross.
Every game.
He just puts it into perfect areas.
And it's people like I said, they're scoring side foots, headers, and it's always right on the money. There's nobody's having to break their stride or anything like that.
It's one you know we'll all do it watching football, and then someone crosses the ball and think, oh, that's a good cross, but it doesn't actually go to anyone. Whereas Nicky Cadden's actually putting in a good cross that actually goes.
It feels more
someone.
like a pass. The accuracy of it every time.
Is he a bit unfortunate not to have been called up to the Scotland squad?
I think he is.
Yeah,
I think he is. I think he is. With the way we play, the kind of player that we want to have.
We don't have any fucking wide players.
We don't. And again, just with the skill set, if he's not going to start. So a lot of the time, you want weapons on your bench. That's what you want. But you're going to have to turn to the bench. You don't always just want the next best player in that position. Like, I need to have someone who can produce something. You can put him on. He's definitely going to work hard
Double
for it.
sub of Nicky Cadden and Simon Murray.
And then the ball's going into the box for that. Like, his crossing's probably better than anyone in that team. And that sounds ridiculous. But the consistency of it's ridiculous.
Killian Phillips at St Mirren.
Never has a player been born to play for St John. For Stephen Robinson.
Just a big, strong boy that likes to
really good.
push people around.
He is really good. He's been probably St Mirren's standout player this season. Just consistently excellent all the time. Fits that system to a T. Looks. You kind of thought that when he signed, even based on the fact he wasn't that great for Aberdeen, but you could kind of see why he would be better at St Mirren. But he's been even better than we envisioned.
See if you have got 4 players in your Scottish Premiership team, there's a good chance you're going to be successful. A competent goalkeeper who's not Joseph Birchik. A centre back who can head the ball, a striker who is a target, a focal point, and someone like Killian Phillips in the middle of the pitch who just eats up ground, is a nuisance, and picks up loose balls
and a goal
wins
threat.
tackles and an aerial threat as well.
And he can ball carry and stuff. He can dribble because he's got that stride and stuff. He's a really good player, and he's really Robinson's unlocked him, and now you're thinking, I wouldn't mind him.
He looks like he enjoys the horrible aspect of football, and which makes him even more adorable.
But he's got a bit of skill. You saw a lot more at Aberdeen. Actually, it was they sort of used him more as a winger all the time. Like actually, it's like a normal winger, so he'd have to dribble, and he would always do little pirouettes and stuff for the ball. So there's a lot of attributes going on there with the size, and like you're saying, his attitude, where you're thinking this guy could get better.
He could be an effective last 10-minute striker.
Yeah,
as well.
I think you're right. I think this guy's very useful, and I think he could get better. I think he could move on even.
And Simon Murray at Dundee is the final nominee. We've spoken about him. Is there anything else to be said?
I like what's good about him is that he was, in terms of signings, is that he was a bit of a gamble considering his age and the fee they paid for him, and it was totally worth it in the end.
The one season, they thought that they've been had by one season, and the fact that he was a Dundee fan. And then without him, which will lead us probably on to another thing, like talismanic, and without him, they would have been absolutely fucked.
Okay, so who wins best sign? Dimitar Mitov, Nicky Cadden, Killian Phillips, or Simon Murray?
Winning the Scottish Cup for the first time in 35 years is a historic event. Wouldn't happen without Mitov, so I'm going to go for him.
Fair play, Tony.
Because he got injured as well, and there was a tiny drop off in form at one point with Mitov. But yeah, I mean, I think sometimes the absolutes do have to just be accepted, and there you go.
Joe,
I would vote Simon Murray.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we should have a bit more jeopardy there. I should have started with Fowler, gone to you, and finished with Tony. But no, Dimitar Mitov at Aberdeen, you have won the best signing. Now we're going into the MVP award, the most valuable player, pound for pound, who has contributed the most to their team. The nominees are Simon Murray, again at Dundee, Martin Boyle, Hibernian, Benny Beningame at Heart and Midlothian, and Sam Dalby at Dundee United. We'll start with Boyle and Dalby because we've spoken about the other two in the past, but we'll go to Sam Dalby first, on loan from Wrexham, big, powerful centre forward.
Dalby is a strong contender for this, I think, and the reason why is because while Dundee United started off the season really well, I think that was those foundations were going to crumble. The defence was still good and Wood still held up, but they had nothing. They had nothing up front. They started the season with Jort van de Sande.
How he got away with worse signing, by the way.
He should have been. He maybe should have been.
Really should have been there. 0 goals.
So they had him, and then they also had Babunski and Trapanovsky playing off him. Babunski by the end of the season just wasn't really in the United team at all. Didn't fit Scottish football. Trapanovsky, talk about most frustrating. he's definitely got to be up there. He has like one good game in 5, if that. One of these wingers that just really, really annoys you. So they had really nothing in the final third until they were like, right, we need to bring in somebody else in. Let's find somebody at a low level in English football who can just heed the ball. Because all we do is we've got Will Ferry down one ring, Ryan Trade's coming back after injury soon down the other wing. They just cross the ball loads. Let's just get somebody for the end of those crosses. Perfect fit, perfect sign-in, and without him, Dundee United are a bottom 16.
And it's worked out for him very, very well as well. Like it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
But you're right, Philip, because without Dundee United were so 1-0, and they managed to bring him in because, again, like you're talking about, the squad was so weak. Goodwin's made something out of nothing, really, with that. The defence played really deep. They were a 1-0 team. So all that was in. So there had to be, the striker had to be deadly, they had to be good, and they had to play off the attributes, like you said, of the two wing-backs. And his heading ability was ridiculous. And that head, again, the header he scored at Tynecastle, I don't think that was given anywhere near the credit it deserved. When you watch it, stooping backwards for a cross, quite a hopeful cross, and then still managing to get all the pace on it, while going backwards and going below the ball to divert it. I was like, that is so difficult to do, and it goes perfectly in the top corner, and that was just like, that's him, like him epitomised.
Yeah, pretty unfortunate. He's unlikely to be back at Tannadice next season. I think his wage demands are perhaps like far out what Dundee United can afford.
And not having him means that Dundee United either have to go and get someone very similar, or they really need to rip up the whole
game plan,
because he was that important to how that could work. Because otherwise, it's just a team that can defend deep.
Okay. And then Martin Boyle. I know, Tony, you'll have plenty to say about him, but we'll come to yourself first, Joel.
He is someone who I was very wrong about this season because I had written him off early in this. He had a really poor start to the season. He's like, is this Martin Boyle finally over the hill and coming down steeply? But he's still got life,
it's
pace,
the best he's ever had.
in his legs, and I think what's helped is throughout especially his Hibs career, he's played in different positions, and he seems to be getting more intelligent and a more rounded footballer rather than just relying on his pace all the time. And I think you can see that while he still has that pace, which really, really helps. And it's
always an important thing to do if you just rely on pace throughout your career. If you've got nothing else beyond that, you've pretty short shelf life. Yeah. Where's Alan O'Brien these days?
I've been spilling a motorbike because he was affected.
And something that always annoyed me, because that doesn't make any sense. You're just going to be as fast as what the motorbike is.
Yeah, it could be Tony Anderson on the motorbike.
Motorbike's still going to go at the same speed.
Even though maybe my weight would make the bike go slightly slower.
Sprinting beyond you.
It just turned out that Alan Bryan was a motorbike on Ivan Sproul. But yeah, Martin Boyle was an excellent season, and as a manager, it must just be so not encouraging, kind of relief of having someone that you can turn to like him. Like if you're needing to change things, if you're just needing to make a switch, or even just as simple as like, right, nothing's really working, just hopefully he comes out with something, and that's what he's good at.
Like, and that's another thing about David Gray. It's he actually dropped Boyle at one point, took him out the wing, which is obviously his friend, to do that. Another thing about saying him, and then he's managed to create a scenario and a role for him that's reignited his whole career, and now went on to have the best career he's ever had at 32. He's been captain of Hibs for the majority of the season. In
wonderful shape as well. I don't know if you've seen a picture of his top off. Wow.
Which is something that was always questioned. His professionalism has been questioned a lot over years and years. But now it's like, and you're talking about his intelligence, his ability to drop off. Now he can pick up the ball there.
Yep.
And then with this front two that we play, he can pick when to go and drift wide and use his winger, like go where he's most at home. But he's still got the ability to go on the shoulder, drifting behind.
I think he's sorry to interrupt, but he's actually quite good or underrated at playing with his back to goal, coming and getting the ball, and then a lot of strikers in Scotland at this level, they'll play with their back to goal, and that's it. So they'll need to just bounce it off. Whereas he can get it, and he can turn in one motion, or he can get it and fuel the striker, and then move around.
Because quite a Martin Boyle goal is to the corner of the box to feel it and pull it, and then drag the ball back across to the goal. So he's been absolutely brilliant and just kept getting better and better. And something I've always loved about Boyle is Rangers, he scores shitloads against Rangers. Hearts, he scores loads against Hearts. Scores loads against Aberdeen. So he likes the big games as well. He's not a flat track bully whatsoever. He's such a talismanic figure. And now, I mean, we're ticking it like that guy's a complete legend at Hibs now. He's been there
definitely.
on and off. He's touched him down in the last minute against Rangers for scoring his 100th goal there. He's definitely going to do that now, which I'll be honest, as I got older after Riordan done it, I just didn't think football would ever be that way, that Hibs would have a player who done that, and if we can get one more season out of him like that, then you're going to be talking a bit like Boyle will be leaving with like 120 goals from Hibs, a swap deal from Alex Harris. 120 goals. He's been wing back, winger and striker. He's been absolutely unbelievable. And in terms of this one, maybe not the most valuable player in terms of this season, because other players without him, Hibs wouldn't have been relegated. They certainly wouldn't have finished third though. They certainly wouldn't have.
I think that's
but overall the most valuable player on this list easily over his career at Hibs.
So we've got Dal.
I was going to talk about Simon. So Benny
Benny's not going to be it. So
no, and I don't think he's Hearts' most valuable player.
I didn't understand the nominations for him. I thought I was like, yeah, he's definitely.
You don't jump in and veto this, fella. This is your podcast.
It definitely. It was hard to find somebody else for it. So no, he was. Benny came in and did kind of lift Hearts, and it was like people kind of look at where Hearts were early in the season and struggling in the bottom two, but that they were always going to go up. Benny coming into the team made a positive impact, but Hearts would eventually got themselves.
We've allowed the Ross County fan to try have a comfort blanket making the nomination because he wanted to make it sound like Hearts would have finished 11th instead of them with Benny Beningame.
If you took Benny out and put someone else in, I don't think it'd be a massive drop off from where Hearts were. Simon Murray for me is the most valuable player. That's why I voted for him if he's the most valuable, he's the best signing. Because if it wasn't for him, I think Dundee would have been relegated.
Yes, I think
they were so bad at the back.
I know they would have been relegated.
Yeah, they would have been relegated.
So bad at the back, like comically bad at the back to the point. I mean, what was it they lost? The most goals anyone's conceded.
So 77 in the end, but it's every season they're in the top flight, their defence is muck.
Yeah,
they don't normally have a guy who can go and score 15, 16 goals. And he's carried and people, because this is something I've noticed, people talked about the Dundee front line being good. No, it's not. There's Scott Tiffany in that. They're not.
It's just Simon Murray.
It's Simon Murray's good.
Yeah. Simon's Murray goals were, if you just looked at his goals and the results, were worth 9 points, but he is worth even more points to Dundee than just
imagine he wasn't pressing and chasing for the front. Think how quickly they were getting to the box.
I was going to say that enthusiasm must be so infectious to be around as well. I reckon you can galvanise the team and get an extra like 5% just because of the sheer effort that he's put in.
He's willing to do it.
I'm going to do it as well.
No hiding place when there's a player like that on the park.
I looked up the stats when Dundee were on pace to concede 82 goals, and that would have been the worst since Dunfermline were relegated. But I think to put it into context, so 78. I'm pretty sure Gretna, their doomed season, when they were clearly the worst team in the league, relegated from pretty much the first kick of the ball. I'm pretty sure they conceded 79.
But it's just the fact that...
What the hell are you doing? Just practice!
It's conceding 2 goals per game. You're having to score 3 goals to win a game.
And without him, that's impossible.
It's ridiculous.
It's not Scott Tiffany's not going to score the hat tricks, is he? Or a Wimmew in the wide. These aren't going to happen.
So can we get... So Fowler, can we get your pick for the MVP? Simon Murray, Joel Sked.
Simon Murray.
Just has to be.
Congratulations, Simon Murray. You are the MVP. Now we're moving into our final award, and this is the best moment. How on earth you managed to whittle this down to just 4 is remarkable, but we'll go through them one by one. We'll give you the nominees and then we'll go through them one by one. So the first up is St Johnstone fans threaten the Motherwell commentary team after a late away goal in McDermott Park. Number 2, an Aberdeen fan gets stuck in a toilet. Number 3, Vaclav Cherny sprays Celtic fans with water. And number 4, just hours later, Simon Murray does the Adebayor after scoring against Dundee United. We'll start with the St Johnstone fans threatening the Motherwell commentator. So this is...
I forgot that was the season until I looked back at the list.
This is a game in late August. This is Moses Abie scored an injury time winner in a 2-1 victory for the Steelmen. And you can hear the commentator saying, some of the St Johnstone fans aren't happy. Some of the St Johnstone fans really aren't happy. And then, clear as day, you can hear, big fella, see that microphone? I'll ram it so far up your arse you'll never get that fucker out. So, what do you think about that one?
Well, that's just abuse at work again.
If
it was a bus driver, you wouldn't be calling that the best moment.
I really like this because I have been in that situation. I think I've commentated for Hearts TV a couple of times at McDermott, and the guys that sit in front are just unhappy if the other team wins.
What a strange football fans.
But I'm very honest. Like we didn't have someone to threaten to put the mic up my behind, but they did say pull out the wires, or like they were threatening to pull the wires.
What makes this clip really funny is the fact that there's so much joy going on. You know, you're seeing the goals, you're seeing the replays in slow motion, and you can just hear this disembodied voice threatening to ram a microphone up someone's arsehole.
And to surprise it doesn't happen more. I'll be honest. That
happens a lot at St Johnstone.
Yeah, but you don't.
It's just not usually audible.
No, and it's not caught like that because they are close, and when it's set up and fans do react badly, even though it is just a guy. But what's he meant to do? Oh, last minute goal, and you're away. You're doing the commentary, and there's
listen to the commentary. The commentary's not like anything. That's like
It's just he's
actually being respectful.
Yeah, I think he's very well aware he's behind enemy territory.
And still in that scenario, he's being threatened with microphones up your bum.
The second pick is the Aberdeen fan getting stuck in a toilet. This is brilliant. This is prior to Aberdeen's 2-1 victory over Motherwell in mid-September. The Dons shared their starting 11 on social media, as teams do every day, every game. And a supporter called Toastman replied to the tweet saying, "I'm trapped in one of the Richard Donaldson toilets." And now
so many questions.
We don't know if Toastman ever made it out alive. We don't know whatever happened to Toastman. If it's a sort of a Robinson Crusoe like escapade where he has to basically form a new life, like living off the toilet, drinking water from the cistern to sustain himself. We don't know whatever happened to him, but just that disembodied tweet there. I'm trapped in one of the Richard Donaldson toilets.
Why would you choose that as your way of trying to get out? First things first, tweet the entire stadium. Basically,
how did he get locked in the first place?
Also, as well,
before the match,
over an hour before the match.
He's really hedging his bets, thinking the most people that will see this are in this stadium will be on Twitter. So I'm going to go and do that. How long is this guy? Could answer. Make he go
thumping the door.
Yeah.
Nobody's listening.
People just like wait, walking out exactly, which is what you'd expect.
Because that's the thing. Like, so how far in advance do turnstiles open? An hour and a half before games, or 15?
I think it's mostly an hour, isn't it?
Good question.
Because he's obviously tweeted out an hour and 15, or he's replied an hour and 15 minutes.
Well, the tweet went out an hour and 15. Maybe he replied a bit later.
Or is that a joke? Is it all
just because? Let's pretend no, it's not.
I don't worry.
Sorry.
Let's think Toastman really was trapped in the toilets of the Richard
I got trapped in a toilet once at a social club right beside Old Trafford Stadium.
Really?
And I had to get my mate to come get me, and obviously he waited ages to do it. So
how did you get trapped?
Just wouldn't open again. The thing wouldn't open again. It was very, very. It was traumatic.
When I was young, I got stuck in the toilet in the airplane, but it was just because I just didn't understand how it worked. So I got really panicked and I was banging on the door. so the stewardess had to come and open it from the outside. I was embarrassed.
Just pull it and sort of
I couldn't.
The associate got stuck in our toilet recently. The door handle just wouldn't open for the inside. Just had to woken up by massive bangs. I was like, what the fuck's that? Like, Craig, you need to come let me out of the toilet. I was like, what's going on? I've now had to tape over it before I get a joiner to come fix it.
No, I just say you're playing role play. You come, I'll fix it.
Gillian's Toastman. Fowler's the maintenance man in the Richard Donald stand.
That's how Scottish football Fowler is.
Gonna suggest this.
Make love to me while you're wearing your boiler suit. Now the third option, Vaclav Cherny sprays the Celtic fans with water. This was tremendous. This was
it's the reaction that makes
it. Hum Zigaman scored a late winner in their 3-2 victory over Celtic just back in March, wasn't it? And just what makes this so good, the clip's about 4 seconds long, and as Cherny sprints towards his teammates, you can see some Celtic fans sort of just stand up and get quite riled, and you've got to watch it back several times to figure out what's happened. And as he is running to join with the melee in front of the Rangers fans. He's just squirted the Celtic supporters down by the dugout, and they are not happy.
They are nonplussed. And the legs, I look the stuff like this again. The legs
It's
is
the opposite to
weeks.
nonplussed.
It's weeks and weeks and weeks of like narrative that's born out of this quickest thing you've ever seen, and people really, really shat the bed over this stuff.
The funniest thing about it was, you can see, I think in subsequent clips, I think that was posted when Czerny was going through the disciplinary process about it. I think Sky Sports News were showing some clips, and the Celtic supporters saying like, "I'm the victim here."
Yeah.
I'm the victim here.
Well, playing the right character. We're very on brand. But so this is the problem we're going through these, is that my favourite one is probably the Aberdeen guy stuck in the toilet, but the moment of the season is probably this, because it just seems so it just seems so alien that someone would actually do it
like
in an Old Firm game. Like
it's like,
at Celtic Park,
it's so juvenile. You know what I mean? We've kind of gone from a far days where, you know, like Chris Woods and Terry Butcher were fighting supporters in the pitch, just running by, squatting a wee bit of water. But that makes it so funny because it's such just a childish act. And they are,
and it could be serious. It could be serious.
Yeah.
There is a world where that went much worse than it actually did. That's the part of it that makes it so funny. Is there's loads of angles.
Like hundreds of people storm the dugout.
Like so many angles from such a ridiculously childish.
Like two groups of supporters that do not like each other in such a febrile atmosphere. You know, it's and like these days, it's quite easy to like actually enter the field of play.
It's the fact that there were police involved. What's the charge, officer?
Assault.
Well, that's what we'd have to get to
assault with
grievous bodily harm.
So let's say, speaking of the victims, like, let me get this right. You got a bit of water on you.
That's correct, officer. I just think that
here's the tunnel.
You live in Glasgow, don't you?
I'm just like, why are you not taking any notes?
It was invisible typewriter. It's the sort of thing as well. I imagine, like at the time, say if it happened to you, you'd be furious at the time. In the atmosphere, you'd be furious. Like a high pressure game, 88th minute winner, you'd be furious. See, like afterwards, you're probably like, that was actually really funny.
Yeah.
However, I don't think this guy's still looking back. Still furious.
Still looking for his pound of flesh.
I think every other supporter base would laugh at it. A few days later, Rangers and Celtic fans, they would not.
No, they get.
Yeah, humour is an alien concept.
Yeah, it's void in that rivalry.
Sectarianism on that.
And on that note,
what if like Neil Lennon ran by and squirted water at John Wilson? Do you think how do you think that would have gone down?
I'm not sure about how much worse it could have went.
Yeah, that's actually
he done that behaviour without the water getting
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. And then on the same day, there was an absolutely fabulous match, one of the best games of football I think I've ever been to. Actually, I had a superb time. I was a guest of the club there up at the Dundee derby, Dundee United versus Dundee. It finished 4-2 to Dundee in injury time. Simon Murray, of course, played for Dundee United. Boyhood Dundee fan, scored an injury time penalty and celebrated by running in front of I think it's a Jerry Kerr stand, where all which had been sold out to Dundee supporters, ran in front of that, ran past the dugout, and then runs towards like all the Dundee United fans in front, and celebrates by sliding on his knees, mimicking Emmanuel Adebayor's famous celebration for Manchester City against Arsenal.
Former Dundee United player, Dundee fan, and he'd also had a vape chucked at him earlier in the game.
I grew up in the city, as you know, from Dundee as well. It's got all the factors. I think that in like Premier League
get the
football,
lighters back.
But in Premier League football, if you're thinking of like the funniest moments, that celebration where Emmanuel Adebayor, who left Arsenal in acrimonious circumstances, sprints the entire length of it, shoving people out of the way, and it's what's so great. See the angle of Adebayor. When you see it's like fans are almost, it's like that scene in World War Z.
Yeah.
When the zombies are running up to try and climb up. It's like these guys all falling on top. It's held back by stewards.
If you want to be critical of this moment in terms of it not winning, you could say that it is a bit of a pale imitation of the Adebayor one for two reasons. One, the production value. Because
I cannot believe we're digging into this moment quite like this.
because with the Adebayo one, it's got the close up of him just sprinting, but he's also got this kind of manic kind of sprint about it, and you're wondering what he's doing, and then he slides, and then you get the alternative camera angle where it's almost like it peels back, shows you what's going on, and you see the Arsenal fans going mental. There wasn't that with the Simon Murray one for both sides, both in terms of the kind of direction from the Sky Sports cameras, and also because of him himself. He was doing it more a kind of cheery jaunt kind of way.
I think in terms of that as well, the state of the match, I think a lot of the fans had maybe left by this point when it's like 3-2. They've just conceded a penalty. I don't want to be here to see this.
And there wasn't the same reaction for the Dundee United fans.
The Adebayor one was just a bit more raw.
Yeah. And there's no point. There's no point having VAR because we don't have all the right cameras, and there's no point in celebrating in front of the fans because we don't have the right cameras for the production values of it.
But however, just as a moment, I think there was we spoke about it in a view from the terrace. It's I think there was a fan in a Dundee fan had filmed it, and you just see him, and it's just that where your mind goes, he must have just completely lost track of his senses then just to go and slide just in front of it. It's a fantastic one. I suppose that's the sort of thing. Maybe while Rangers and Celtic fans will not laugh at being squirted with water, I think that Dundee and Dundee United fans will probably think this is actually quite funny.
That's the same. Other fans have sense of humour.
Aye,
when they're in the clip bar together. Chatting
it's probably a wee bit too chummy.
Actually, it's a crap rivalry.
Aye.
That's why nobody was bothered. That's why there's no need for the camera.
They're all clapping.
Well done, Simon. We always liked you.
No, I had a great time there. That was an absolutely phenomenal game of football. And for first Dundee derby, what a time to go though. But enough about me and my footy adventures. What is the best moment of the season? Is it St Johnstone fans threatening the Motherwell commentator? Is it the Aberdeen fans stuck in the toilet? Is it Vaclav Černý spraying the Celtic supporters with water? Or is it Simon Murray doing the Adebayor? Craig Fowler?
Černý.
Tony Anderson?
I really wanted to be the Aberdeen fan in the toilet because that, for me, is the thing that I found amusing the most. But the Černý one rippled round probably most of the world would have seen clips of that, and how ridiculous, and the legs that got in of it. It is probably the actual moment of the season.
Černý.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, but all very good moments. Although I suppose getting locked in a toilet, I'm not sure if that really constitutes a moment.
This is my moment.
Is it yanked out the handle?
Toilet paper just stuck to his face.
So let's remind ourselves of the awards. The Rocky Bashiri won the Josh McGuinness Award for Most Improved. Heart and Midlothian were crowned Most Disappointing Team. Dre Wright was named as Mr. Versatile. Jack Butland won the Most Disappointing Player Award. Most Overachieving Manager went to Dundee United boss Jim Goodwin. Simon Murray won the Andy Dorman Award for Best Bottom Six Player. Joseph Bursick won the Shane Duffy Award for Worst Signing. James Wilson is the Discovery of the Year. Jonah Iunga won the Stuart Armstrong Award for Most Handsome. Dimitar Mitov is the Best Signing. MVP goes to Simon Murray. And the moment of the season, Vaclav Černý sprays the Celtic fans with water.
Class.
Well done, everyone.
Yes.
Football, bloody hell.
Has it been a good season? This is a chance to wrap just a wee discussion there.
I would say,
has it been a good season?
I would say this has been a good season. Just the standard of games was a lot better than last campaign. There was a lot more excitement, a lot more high scoring games, a lot more late goals. You had a good race for third. You had a good race for the top six. You had a decent relegation battle.
Rangers were a good laugh.
Title was a lot of shite as usual, and you also had somebody else winning a trophy other than Celtic or Rangers.
And there was the narrative
Celtic, really.
and never been able to know who was good and who was bad, and everyone being made a fool of at different times of the season.
Yeah,
because
so much rollercoaster
nothing
stuff going
made
on.
sense. And I think this is maybe we'd be biased because Hibs obviously were ultimately quite successful in it, but I do think this has been one of the most memorable seasons on record for loads of reasons.
I'm not enjoying it all that much.
We've
got a 6'4" man though. He's on the way. You've got to go write an article the minute this finishes.
And what about next season? We've said goodbye to Ross County and St Johnstone. They've been replaced by Falkirk and Livingston. What are you anticipating for next time?
I'm anticipating both of them go right back down again.
I expect Livingston to be more competitive than Falkirk.
Yeah,
they saw that Falkirk struggled in those games against the teams around them. Really,
if Falkirk tried to play the way they had in the Championship and the way John McGlynn wants to, they'll really struggle.
I think it's more to do with the fact that they're just keeping that squad, which is a team that was largely put together in League One.
I said to Fowler on the drive through here, I think that a lot of fans might be hanging their hat on that first half performance against Celtic in the League Cup, which was very impressive. But it's one thing getting up for a huge game against the best team in the country. It's a very different thing when you're just in that the cycle of just.
And ultimately, they did lose that game 5-2.
Yes, well, that's ultimately it. But no, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to doing more podcasts over the course of the season. So, Phil, this is your job. You tell us what happens next.
So we will not be doing too much on the main feed until we're back. It certainly won't be 2 a week, but there'll be some sporadic ones there. We've still got to record part 3, the final part of the list.
Do we now?
Me, you and Sean.
I'm looking to do the series of that decisive games for teams in the lower leagues. Like you look over their past 10, 15 year history and pick one match that sort of shaped the direction. That
Sean, you think you were getting a rest? No.
That sounds like a Patreon series to me.
Yes,
but yes, a
couple ideas for that.
So Patreon will be going with, I think as expected, if there's any issues, I will let fans know. But I think we've got to have enough in the bag that even when I'm on holiday, there will still be 5 Patreons a week. So even though the main feed will go quiet, especially on Scottish football, we'll put up probably a couple of pop culture podcasts throughout the summer. But if you want to just continue listening to football, best way to do so, patreon.com/Terrace podcast.
We have our quiz, our first ever Terrace podcast on Tuesday, which is a couple of days. And then it's a Saturday.
I'm not putting this up right away, so it'll probably be tomorrow when people are listening to this.
If you're interested in going, tough because it's sold out. It's sold out very quickly, so I can't wait for it. I'm lucky enough to be hosting it, but really it's Craig Anderson. Will be the star of the show, who is just an absolutely sensational quizmaster.
Yeah, it's going to be brilliant.
It'll be so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's people that don't like the Terrace have snapped up all the tickets, so they just don't turn up.
Works for me. We've just played the quiz.
We've got our money.
Poor for the auction though, and then for the charitable auction. But
yes. Aye, well, certainly be worth it. And remember, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Craig G Telfer Football. That is something that we're going to be picking up a lot over the course of the season. I really appreciate the feedback for the first couple of videos that have gone up, and we hope to expand that going forward. It's a lot of fun.
Subscribe to the Heart Standard.
When you get your haircut, you won't be playing with it as much and not missing as many goals.
Well, this is it. I'm getting a full 2 in the top and 1 in the back of the sides.
A buzz cut just to make sure that you're more focused on the game.
Pretty much, and to prove a point to Joel, because I think the next time I see him in person, it'll have grown back longer than his. It's just
Tuesday.
It's a power thing. I realise it's a power thing. I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it to make him feel bad. But I suppose we'll leave it at that.
Yes.
That was brilliant. Thanks. That was a great season of football. Thank you.
That was good. I think we managed to successfully wrap it up in about the 2 hours as well. So fantastic. So I think, subscribe to the Patreon, as Fowler's intimated. For as little as £2 a month, you can have access to hours and hours of content. There's some great stuff that's going up there at the moment, rounding off the season for a number of teams across the SPFL. So it leaves me to say, Craig Fowler, thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Anderson, thank you.
My pleasure.
Joel Sked, thank you.
You're welcome.
And, well, I was going to say enjoy your football, but there is no football.
Enjoy your summer, but please, unlike Vaclav Journey with the Celtic fans.
Yeah, that really was disrespectful, wasn't it? Yeah.
Who's had a disrespectful summer before?
I'm trying to think. I started thinking of like the Chelsea fans in Rocklov just chucking plastic chairs at one another. Don't do that.
But it's Englishmen on. What else they need to do?
That's what they have to do.
This is our role.
It's after the pandemic, everyone's got this pent-up energy.
We'll make excuses for anyone in the football
even before the pandemic, that was English football fans' culture.
Yeah.
If they were in Belgium with the Netherlands.
They've got a culture.
Was it Euro 2000?
Euro 2000 was with the water cannons.
Remember, was it the 2016 Euros? Stan Collymore gassed in the face with tear gas. Went around saying journalist.
Wasn't he doing it on, what was the stream?
Periscope.
That takes us back.
Thank you, England fans.
Cheers. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Cheers.